see my legs kicking now. I want to see my legs kicking now. I asked for it. I asked for it. It's not going to be outdone by you. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the August 12th meeting of the Lynbrook Board of Education. As always, we'll all please rise. Mr. Yaker, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Be seated. Roll call. T. Everyone's here. Do approval of minutes. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of July 7th monthly meeting, please? Mrs. Hanson, second. Mr. Yaker. All in favor? May I have a motion to accept the minutes of July 21st, 2020 work session? Mrs. Danino, second. Mr. Paskoff, all in favor? Good, thank you. So we're going to, obviously, this is a very important meeting. We know a lot of people have a lot of questions. A lot of information we'll be disseminating about the reopening. We are going to go a little bit out of order with our agenda because we know the majority of this meeting will be spent discussing reopening protocols. The protocol tonight will be that presentation will be made. The Board of Ed members will ask questions regarding the presentation when that time takes place. Members in the community that are present will have the opportunity to ask questions. After that, we will then take questions from people at home. I would ask those at home to wait before sending your questions. There's a lot of information we have already that will be worked into this presentation that will address many of these issues. And hopefully at that time there will not be as many questions as some may have now. To begin the evening, and by the way, also on the online questions, it will be one question per member at home who's sending an email. So if you send an email in and you're starting to type it now with 25 bullet points, that's not going to be read. If you have a question, please just send that one question with your email. I'd like to begin tonight with welcoming new staff. Long-term sub in special education at the high school, Jessica Buongiorno, welcome. Long-term sub at West End, Lauren Young. And a school nurse will be working at Our Lady of Peace, Michelle Laveri. Mr. Paskoff, correspondence to the board.
Okay, is my mic on? Good now? Yeah. Okay. All right, we received an email from a parent regarding New Yorkers for school sports. We received an email from a parent with questions about resolutions for the reopening plan. We received a email from a parent imploring the board to reopen schools in September. We received 35 emails from parents concerning reopening of the schools. We received 2 emails from residents about cleaning the process and what disinfectants we're using. We received an email from a parent about thermal cameras. We received an email from a parent about specific masks. We received an email from a parent regarding BOCES. We received 2 emails from parents thanking the board and administration for all that they are doing. We received an email from a parent thanking the board, administration, and high school staff for support and care for her son. We received 2 emails from parents regarding graduation. We received an email from a parent following up on a previous email. We received an email from a resident regarding use of facilities. We received a follow-up letter about risk insurance. We received 2 emails from parents about attendance at the August 12th Board of Ed meeting. We received an email from a parent about summer playground, an email from a parent about ACT testing. We received an email from a resident regarding oversight of construction. We received an email from an alumni regarding a call to action about racism. We received an email from a parent regarding the community petition. And we received 13 emails from residents in support of Owls for Change. We received acknowledgments of sympathy from Alice Marie Bresnahan's family and from Mary Ann Healy.
Dr. Bureau, are you going to be posting this letter? We're going to post this letter as a response, right, as a bulletin. Thank you, Mr. Paskoff. I also want to read a statement from the district from Dr. Burek and the Board of Education. I also want to make sure, because of the nature of what we're doing tonight, that we're clear. Am I being heard clearly without being muffled? Okay, fine, thank you. So because of the national and local conversations that have been taking place about diversity and racism and the school's involvement in that, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of questions to the administration, to the board. So to address that, Dr. Burek and the board have come up with a statement that, in addition to my reading, will be posted on our website. We agree that it is important for our schools to provide a strong foundation for students to succeed in our schools, and as they continue their education outside of Lynbrook. In fact, over the last 8 years, we have made significant strides in diversifying our curriculum. We have incorporated diversity in our literature selections, beginning at the elementary school level. Additionally, secondary students have a wide variety of diverse authors and themes from which to choose, including Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's TED Talk, The Dangers of a Single Story, A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park, and several writings by Langston Hughes, such as Harlem and The Negro Speaks of Rivers. We are also working to diversify our curriculum in other areas. As the diversity of our student body has evolved, we have made concerted efforts to ensure our students and their families are provided with the appropriate tools and necessary resources to succeed within our school. Following the unrest experienced in our nation after the death of George Floyd, our guidance department proactively sent home resources to our families. These resources were meant to assist our families with anti-racism conversations and help our young students understand the troubling events occurring in our country and around the world. Those resources, as well as contacts for our support staff, are available on our website. As we have watched our television and read the newspapers, we have noted the importance of anti-racism and focusing on diversity, inclusion, and equity in our schools. At our board retreat in early July, we crafted our goals for the year with a specific focus on continuing to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity for all. The objectives of this goal are part of our long-term plan for the district-wide Diversity Council. Each of our school buildings will establish a subcommittee of the Diversity Council and provide monthly updates, create additional cultural celebrations and monthly recognitions, and provide training to members of the administration to begin meaningful conversations on race. Now, as I read that, I just want to point out for a moment that I remember the first time I was invited down to the kindergarten center to watch the cultural festival there, which is an unbelievable event, where all the students' families create different food dishes, meals and desserts from where their families came from. And the number of countries represented by the flags that are in there is really a testament to the type of diversity we have in our community and continue to have with new families moving in. I mean, if you went there, we probably had more countries represented than the UN. It's a very spectacular event and very interesting one during these times to realize how much diversity we have. The district has always connected The district has also connected with the Anti-Racist Project, a group of volunteers who have dedicated themselves to facilitating meaningful conversations about racism and microaggressions exhibited by so many. We are also committed to hiring a staff of educators who will continue to provide our students with a well-rounded education in a safe and inclusive environment. Dr. Berman, our Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, Transportation, and Student Support Services, currently serves in the Nassau BOCES Diversity Recruitment Program. As a member of this program, Dr. Berman helps candidates with resume writing, interview skills, and has greater access to recruit candidates with a more diverse background. Lynbrook, as many other towns, is a microcosm of today's society. As much needs to evolve in society in general, we understand that the schools need to evolve as well. We are grateful for the voices uncovering and sharing their experiences. We are listening, and we will continue to research best practices and develop our curriculum as it best suits the needs of our Lynbrook students. Dr. Burek and the Lynbrook Board of Education. And this statement will be posted on our website. Moving on to reports from trustees. Other than receiving emails about reopening, anything else going on? Mrs. Marcus?
I would like to commend the high school on the graduation that they pulled together at Point Lookout. It was definitely, you know, later than expected, but it really was enjoyed by everyone that was there. It was nice to see the kids get to be together, and overall, I just feel like it was a great ending to the school year for the kids, you know, the seniors that missed out on a bunch of other milestones.
Yeah, we've been so busy, I forgot that you and I, well, at least you had a photograph of Jake walking up there, but it really was a wonderful event from not having anything to have and not being sure. And just to let you know what happened with that, our students wanted to stay together. So in the time at the end of June, when other schools were beginning to have graduations and doing it by different groups, 20 or 30 at a time, our students were so united together that they wanted to wait it out till they had the opportunity to actually do it together. And it was really worth the wait. They were able to have it down there, Point Lookout. It was a beautiful day, nice breeze. They were able to take pictures with the beach backdrop. But in a year where so much was lost, it was really nice that the administration and the high school was able to give them that special moment. So thank you for reminding me. That was very much appreciated.
Even with Jake walking up, a.k.a. Ethan holding his face,
He was
his
there.
picture.
Nothing else from the board. Moving on, we have no old business. On new business, we have building inspections coming up, which will be very interesting this year. Dr. Bjerg, would you like us to announce the dates and participants? Is that necessary or just announcing?
Okay, the first building inspection will take place on August 29th. It will be the Kindergarten Center and South. That's at 8:30 in the morning. Mr. Paskoff, you will attend that. Thank you. On Tuesday, September 1st, will be Marion Street and Waverly Park, and that will begin at 1 o'clock. Heather? Wednesday, September 2nd, will be the high school. It's a big school, so it goes all by itself. At 2 o'clock on Wednesday, September 2nd, Mr. Pileski and Mr. Yeager. And Thursday, September 3rd, West End and North, that will begin at 1:30. Ms. Hanson and Ms. Marcus, thank you. And we're doing them much earlier this year because we do want the Board of Ed to be able to see the classrooms before the students actually arrive to school.
Her just went off.
Okay.
Well, no more new business. We will get on to discussing our presentation for reopening plans. Again, the manner in which this will take place is the administration will do a presentation. It will be in sections. After each section during the presentation, members of the board will ask questions. At the completion of the presentation, we have other board business to do, and then we will get to public session, at which time the community will have the opportunity to address the board on the reopening plans or every other issues we have. You know, as we get into discussing this reopening plan, which I know has been a very big issue for everyone, we have to keep in mind and understand this has never been done before. So we have a plan, and we understand not everyone will like the plan. You know, we have people that are begging us to open up the school, and they want to send their kids back for 10 hours a day. We have other families that, no matter what happened, are not going to be sending their kids to school. You have to understand the multitude of issues that we have to make sure we can operate the school safely and at the same time educate our kids, keep our kids and staff safely. So we have to anticipate that we have to be flexible. So after we hear about the plan and implement the plan, we have to stay fluid with that. It will be somewhat chaotic in the building. We have to understand that. We have to appreciate that. We still don't know what other new rules may come out from the Department of Health or what the government may decide we can or can't do. But as of what we know about as of today, this is what the plan will be. It will be presented. I just ask that everybody appreciate that, be understanding and be flexible when it comes to the implementation of it. If by doing that we will stay successful and keep moving forward, we just kind of have to remember we're going to have to improvise, we will adapt, we will overcome, and we will continue to move the district forward. Dr. Burek?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Belmont. I just want to reiterate that, but I'd first like to start by once again thanking the 100-plus people who volunteered their time their input, their common sense, their intelligence to help craft the plan, putting together some of the very intricate details to make sure that we provide the best for our students. We needed to weigh the concerns of all of the families. We have a K through 12 district. There are obviously different concerns on the elementary level than on the high school level. And then at the end of the day, when the governor finally and the New York State Education Department provided their guidance, and 2 weeks later we had to put together the plan, that's when we had to pull all the pieces together. So again, as Mr. Belmont said, this is really still a work in progress because we have the plan, but each week it seems more information comes out. And just last Friday, the governor made additional requests of school districts, and very quickly we started working on the additional demands. One of them was the informational meetings. Tonight is the first of the 3 informational meetings for the community. By the end of this week, every principal will be holding the second meeting with their own individual building populations. That is the second informational meeting. The third meeting we're going to hold next week, but we're going to hold that in a Q&A forum where the people presenting this evening are going to answer any questions. We'll do a live stream and we'll answer any additional questions that people may have after these first 2 informational sessions. So by the end of this week, if you have some questions that have not already been answered, because there are a lot of questions have been answered, I have actually truly tried to respond to emails. I ended up stopping today by about 1 o'clock, responding to parents' emails and questions individually, just because we needed to prepare for tonight. But if there are any outstanding questions, I'm going to ask you to email those outstanding questions, if they have not already been addressed, to a new email account that is established, and it's reopening@lynbrookschools.org. And that will be in this Friday's bulletin. You know, every Friday I send out a weekly communication to the community. So it will be reopening@lynbrookschools.org. Any questions that we receive from that central office, and Mr. Sater will be answering them next Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m. And we will live stream it and we will record it so that if you're working and you can't watch it live, you'll be able to hear the answers from that. So those are the 3 informational sessions. And with that, I'm going to start the present.
One sec. Yes, Mrs. Hanson.
It's reopening.
Schools.org.
No, it's reopening at
at
lynbrookschools.org.
.org. Could you clarify, is that going to be an email that the board will get CC'd on or not?
No, it's a new email account.
Okay, so if a parent is like, did you see that email I sent? We go, no, we didn't.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Is it working?
Yep.
Okay.
You're
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just clarify, are all of those meetings going to be recorded for people to watch at a later time?
Well, I
Principal?
understand that the principals' meetings warrant. Is that the desire that the board wishes to have the?
If
The
we could,
meetings?
yeah.
Yeah, I think any meeting on this subject that can be recorded to enable them to gather information, which I think makes it easy all around. So many times they're asking questions where this meeting is being recorded, which is a great place to get resource information afterwards, as well as any follow-up meetings. If that's possible, that would be very helpful.
I just also have a question about the meeting, the live stream next Wednesday. If people can't watch the live stream, but they have questions before that, can they still submit them to the email address, the reopening email address? and
That's what they do. They
Okay.
email reopening@lynbrookschools.org.
Are you also going to be taking emails during the
No.
live stream? Okay, so
No.
everything has to be in
Please.
before. Is there a
Yes.
cutoff time that it has to be in by?
Prior to Wednesday. So please send all emails by the end of the day on Tuesday, and then we will be able to address them at that last informational session. Okay. Now, before we begin the actual presentation, there were a lot of pieces involved, and I know people have a lot of specific individual questions. Please know that protocols do evolve. The Department of Health constantly provides different guidance, takes things on a case-by-case basis. The protocols that are on our website, those are general protocols that the school district will follow. The other request that the governor made last Friday was to put up testing, tracing protocols. They are now on our website, so you can see them now on our website. And just know the district will always follow the Department of Health guidelines when it comes to contact tracing and exposure and who to deem direct contact and indirect contact. And I just want everyone to know that in our protocols, there's a chart you can follow, but I know a lot of questions are coming in. Well, what if student A and what if teacher B? Those are all very special, specific cases that, once again, once we are notified of a particular case, the first thing we're doing is calling the Department of Health. So I just want everyone to know that, and then we will always follow the guidance of the Department of Health. So with that being said, the presentation will begin. For those of you, and many of the people in this audience were actually sat on the committee, we had 5 major committees, subcommittees of the task force. The first one was health and safety, then the facilities, the instructional plan, transportation, and extracurricular and athletics. So the health and safety protocols, I think, are one of the more important ones. We're going to begin with that. And Mr. Martellotti, actually, he was the chairperson of this committee, and his son actually had a graduation this evening. So we do have districts still celebrating graduations. So in his stead, we have Dr. Lynch, who is going to go over that for him. And I'm going to clean this, even though I'm wearing a mask. Very important.
Thank you, Dr. Burek. So the health and safety protocols really begin in the home. So one of the important parts of the guidance is that all students must be pre-screened before showing up for school. So the way we intend to handle this is we've been investigating several apps and technologies that will be able to assist us in this. We actually have a product demonstration tomorrow at 11 a.m. with one that we think is going to be really good for us. It integrates with PowerSchool. So what a parent would do is go online every morning, and it's much the same that anyone who is an employee in this district, before we come to work every day, we have to fill this questionnaire out. It'll be a very similar questionnaire. It requires the parent to take the temperature of the child before coming to school every day. There'll be a series of questions that one answers about whether anyone in your home has been diagnosed with COVID-19, what your contact with people with COVID-19 has been. Have you traveled to any quarantined state or places where there is prohibited travel? So there'll be a bunch of questions. You'll certify that you don't have to give the exact temperature, but the fact that the temperature is below the threshold, which is 100, and then you'll press submit. With that integrating with PowerSchool, we will then have a list of those children that we know, in a sense, are pre-cleared, and those students who are going to show up at school who have not been cleared. If a child, so what we're really hoping, and could be a great part, is the older kids who have their cell phones, it will be able to, at the door, be either red or green. So we'll know that that kid is cleared to come in, has taken the survey at home, has a temperature, shows it up, and they're admitted. And we can actually customize that so we can look at some different scenarios. If a child has not done so, then we will need to put that the child in a place where we can take the temperature and the form can be filled out. With the younger children, if the parent is not there, it may involve a call to the home. So this is where we could use a really great cooperation as you are submitting your forms, deciding your instructional program. You're all agreeing to the fact that you will participate in this program. And just for a very basic sense of traffic flow at the buildings, if we don't have people doing this at home, it could get really very complicated. So we're going to ask you to help us with that process. So that's where that begins. Then it comes down to self-reporting. So in order to keep everyone safe, we have to know what's going on in people's homes. So if someone in your home is diagnosed with COVID-19, or you at work have close contact with someone, you will notify that to our staff, most principally our nurse. All of our nurses, our principals, myself, Dr. Burek has been trained in contact tracing. There is a series of protocols and questions that are asked to determine whether you are eligible for contact tracing or not. That is done in partnership with the Department of Health, and we take our guidance from there. And really what we do is we take the information and we describe it to the Department of Health with fidelity. They then ask us the questions, and then there are determinations based on that. And then what would happen at that point, if there is a cause, then it moves over to the Department of Health's contact tracing department, and then they will be handling it on the part of Nassau County, which is another whole different department, if you will, and they'll be handling it from their end, and they'll be making their own determinations. They may seek further information from you. They may not seek further information from you. That is all their prerogative at that point. The management of sick persons. So this is now if a person got ill in school, all of our nurses' offices are going to be divided, either with a separate room or within the body of the nurse's office itself. There'll be an isolation room. So in essence, there are two nurses' offices. There's the nurses' offices for people who scrape their knees and need regular nursing. And then if someone is presenting with symptoms of COVID-19, that child or that teacher is put into the isolation room. There will be social distancing and masks used in that room to maintain safe distance within that. The person's emergency contact is called, because a teacher could get sick and also need to be driven home. So that person would remain in the isolation room up to the point that their emergency contact comes and take them home. And then we report, actually before that, once we know that that's going on, we're already in contact with the Department of Health. If the person tests positive for COVID-19, the Department of Health will lead us what to do. I can't commit to any specific protocol because the Department of Health is going to guide the process, and they will say, did this happen? Did that happen? Based on that, it could ultimately involve in the closure of a whole school for 48 hours for disinfecting. It could involve the closure of multiple schools. It could not involve any of those. Again, as Dr. Burek said, it's going to specifically come from the Department of Health at that point. So the contact tracing, I think I had described this a little bit before. We're all it's getting used to a new language. So we now all know that what is considered close contact. So people with COVID-19, you may be in a room with someone that has COVID-19, and you may not necessarily have been in actual close contact with the people. There is a definition that the Department of Health and the CDC has come up with close contact. Within 6 feet of a positive case for more than 10 or 15 minutes, exposed to or given care to a positive case, direct touching, shared food, exposed to sneezing or coughing or talking. Those are the things that the professional contact tracers at the Department of Health are going to need more information about. The district cooperates with the contact tracing, but the real contact tracing is being done on the part of the Nassau County Department of Health as the lead agency in this vicinity. So that's and that is yes. And Dr. Burek's reminding me that those protocols are on the website. So one of the important things is healthy hygiene practices. This really becomes part of the education, not just of kids, but of the entire world. All of us are acting very differently right now. This has become a fixture in everyone's homes and everyone's cars. So we're teaching kids that they should be washing their hands, that they should not be rubbing their eyes, that proper masking must be worn. All of that becomes of hygiene processes. Mr. Seda is going to talk in a few moments about what we're doing on the facility side, but we have hand sanitizer available at every classroom. We have portable sinks that will be provided outside of eating areas. All of that is regarding the hand hygiene, and then just basic keeping 6 feet away from people. And when you can't stay 6 feet away from people, really masks have to be worn. So one good just thing that kids should know is if you're going to the bathroom, you're going to put your mask on because you're going to be in a hallway. And you're going to go into a bathroom, and while we're going to encourage kids to not bunch up at bathrooms, it's going to be inevitable that two kids might be in the bathroom at the same time. That's why a mask has to be worn. That's the type of stuff that needs to be taught as healthy hygiene processes. Okay, yeah, so returning to school. So this is a, I know the folks at home can't see this, but the folks here can see the manual. This is the official manual for a reference guide for suspected, presumptive, or confirmed cases of COVID-19. So depending on how one has been exposed to COVID-19 and how one's home has been involved in COVID-19, there will be different protocols. There is a simplified version of this that is up on our website right now, basically saying that, you know, if you don't have any problems at home, you're going to come right in. If you're exposed to with close contact, you would need to stay home for 14 days. If you're diagnosed but no symptoms, but you have had a positive test, then you're going to be home for 10 days since the first positive COVID test. Then there's going to be the, what I'll call like the grayer areas, where you're exhibiting one symptom of COVID. So that could be fever, difficulty breathing, or loss of taste or smell. That person is going to be asked to remain home and get a doctor's opinion on what's going on. If it's just something where it's a regular stomach virus or something like that, we're going to treat it like a stomach virus. However, if it turns out to be COVID-19, then the COVID-19 protocols will take over. If it turns out to be seasonal allergies, and that's what the doctor says, the kids come into school the next day. So those are the kind of the basic parts between that. You may. I guess you got it.
So that is one of the questions that keeps coming up about the allergies. Currently, in consultation with the district physician, is if you have one of those symptoms of COVID, we're going to treat it as if you could potentially have COVID. So people are asking, well, you know, I have seasonal allergies. Right now, our district physician is very strict on following the COVID symptom chart. We're hoping that if we keep, working on this, that we could try to relax that a little bit. And I have answered questions so far that, you know, we'd have to treat it and you'd be absent and we'd have to treat it that way. But I'm hoping that maybe within a month or so that we could take a look at that. If we have a doctor's note in advance, for example, if we know, if the nurse knows your child and knows that you have allergies every single year, we're hoping that maybe we could relax that a little bit. But right now, our district physician is saying it's a strict symptom, but we're hoping that as school approaches, maybe we can relax that and we'll change that protocol as we get closer to school, because we know that that's a big one on everyone's mind right now.
Okay, we cannot emphasize enough the importance of face coverings. So face coverings are going to be required on the part of both staff and students. We have 100-year-old buildings. We have some very small classrooms. Mr. Sater will be talking about that shortly. So in many cases, we will not be able to maintain 6 feet distancing within classrooms. We have purchased barriers for desks that will create a physical barrier, but really the mask is going to be the thing that keeps everybody safe, so that really has to be emphasized. We need your help at home. That would be a great thing. If you have younger kids, maybe now's a great time to get them used to the fact of, hey, let's wear a mask. Let's decorate it. Let's make it our own. Let's make it something. We have some great resources on the website already of how you're supposed to put on a mask. You know, how this isn't okay, where it's got to cover your nose, it's got to go below. You got to make sure that you're not leaving any air exposed. Yeah, so that's all very important with the face coverings, and we have PPE for our staff. So all of our teachers, we have enough. We have 90,000 masks in stock right now for our teachers and staff. We have medical grade PPE for our nurses, because that's important to keep them safe. And then we have a supply of masks for kids, because we know they might forget it, they might drop one in a puddle, they might do something. So there'll always be some emergency masks around. But we really ask that you provide those to make that part of the experience for your kid. So that's on the face coverings. All right. Right along with face coverings becomes the healthy. What am I doing? Stop this right. Okay, there we go. I'm now going to admit what's happening here, because I'm now 56 years old. these glasses are fogging up, and I can't read a blessed thing. And I know everyone out there who's wearing glasses right now knows exactly what I'm talking about, but I just better fess up because I keep oh, you see that? You can see. I'm gonna give one of these. How about that? All right, so stop the spread. So we are a school, so education is very important to us. So it's not just the fact that kids are being kept safe in school. We need these practices to be reinforced. So when they're out with their friends, they know to keep appropriate distance. So these just some basic stuff. Social distancing, how to cover yourself so you're not exuding respiratory droplets. And then we're going to have signage around the school that reinforces this. Mr. Sater will be talking about in his presentation how we do have one-way hallways established and one-way stairwells established, and there will be signage there to help remind the kids of that. Social distancing, once again, classrooms are going to be configured to allow for social distancing. Once again, in many of our classrooms, we will not be able to maintain the 6 feet. We hope to do between 3 and 5, along with the barriers and the facial masks to keep everybody safe. And then we have had, already these discussions have started with staff and with children who might have conditions that make them of higher risk. So those are very personal conversations that are going on already. You can assure that we're doing that. And then finally, the state has not given us any relaxation regarding drills because we still need to do lockdown drills and we still need to do fire drills. They will be modified. So some of our safety drills, and again, some of this is confidential information, there will be building level plans, how we will do drills in an appropriately socially distant way. That's what I'll say about that at the district level. Okay. And I think that's that. Okay. And now we're going to, Mr. Sater will take over the, I'm sorry, yes, we're going to stop and we're going to take questions on health and safety from members of the board. Ms. Danino?
Okay, I have 3 questions, sorry. So to report if my child has COVID and I want to report it to the school, is there a specific email address that we're using for that?
That would be a call to the nurse.
Call to the nurse, okay. If it's after school hours, email, yeah. I get the test results at 4 o'clock. I would email the nurse and the principal. Okay. Have we looked into any clear masks for people like speech teachers, kindergarten
Yes,
teachers?
so they are being looked
Okay,
at.
and I heard 2 different things regarding the masks. Masks all the time. Masks all the time.
Yep.
Okay, and in the drills in the high school, for example, the one-way hallways, will those have to be abandoned to get them out as quick as possible, or?
I think we would look at a drill and an emergency in very different ways.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on that, the one-way hallways in the high school, because the way some of them, I'm sure Mr. Sater is going to go over this when he does his presentation, some of those hallways in the high school have to be two-way, but we are going to be putting markings down so that students stay to one side so that you do not have a group of kids walking down the hallway, that you'll have to stay to one side of the hallway to try to maintain some distancing with that.
Just a
Jerry, wait. Can't
Close
be
it to your mic, or,
Is his mic on?
yeah, there you go.
It's good. All right, with the drills, we can do it with less than the whole building. You can do it for certain floors, you can do it for certain rooms, so you don't have to cause that massive exodus into the hallway at the same time. You know, basically, obviously, if there's a real fire, one of the things they did say, all bets are off. You know, social distancing for a true emergency, obviously, you know, you make it happen. But for the drills, you can modify so you don't cause those problems that you were talking about.
But once again, that's why the face masks are so important.
I'd like to make a plea about face masks. I've seen a million pictures on Facebook, social media, Instagram, graduation, the prom, pictures of kids, parents, right next to each other, not in their bubble, in their social bubble, and they're hugging, and there's no masks. And if we want this to end, and if we want to keep the schools open more than a month, people need to wear masks at home as well. I don't think it's bad to take a picture with a mask on. We took our board picture this year with our masks on. We're going to take my family's going to take our holiday picture with our masks on. It'll be funny, you know. But these are things that we're going to remember anyway. We're going to remember those masks. So I plead to everybody, please leave your masks on. Please wear a mask. I work in early intervention, and in early intervention, if we go into kids' houses, anybody over 2 years of age is supposed to wear a mask. And I have kids as young as 2 and 3 that are wearing masks and sort of like it. It's fun. It's cool. They get cool masks. So there's no reason that a 5 and a 6 and a 7-year-old can't wear a mask either. So that's my plea. I hope everybody can wear a mask, and I hope we can keep the schools open for for a good period of time.
I mean, I think if history has taught us anything, it's we're in this together. And the only way we can protect each other is to truly protect each other and follow the rules in order to prevent this spread. So
Dr. Barrett,
I reiterate.
what's an example of a mask break? What opportunities exist during the day for the students that breaks in the mask? I guess
Okay,
lunch is
so
one, what else?
Dr. Belekas is going to go over the instructional day, but built on the elementary level, they're actually going to have scheduled mask breaks. So the teacher will be able to determine, and the principal's going to work with that to schedule those, and the children will be able to go outside, get some fresh air, get a mask break. On the secondary level, it's really going to be more ad hoc of, you know, where they fit it in
Okay.
for that. But it's actually going to be scheduled on the elementary
All
level.
right. I think that's a good example of getting information out now and letting the audience know and those at home that many questions, the specific questions about the specific buildings that you have, that is why there is a meeting set up with the principals. Those very specific granular questions will be addressed and answered at those meetings. Also, is there any justification for a parent, any medical justification, or is there any reason why a kid should be able to get into the building or at any level and not wear a mask? Is there any guidelines under the state where someone's going to say my kid medically can't wear a mask? Or as far as we know, there's no justification under the current law and executive order to allow that?
Well, so that's a good question. If a child cannot medically wear a mask for some reason, we're not just going to accept a regular doctor's note. We need to have a note from a specialist, so that's very important information. If a child really has a severe medical condition who cannot wear a mask, we need a note from a specialist that outlines exactly what the issue is and why the child can't wear a mask. Because once again, if you have a child not wearing a mask, then that child is near children who are wearing masks, and we just want to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe, not only the child who cannot wear the mask, but the others who are wearing masks also.
Right. And also, if you, Dr. Lidge, can address, on the protocols upon entrance to the building, they have to fill out that form, and then they have the phone. Either one, it's fine. If the child forgets the phone that day, what would take place? Let's say the middle school, the kid shows up and forgets his phone, but the parents had done that. What would take
So
place?
then the form still needs to be filled out, so that child would be put aside, the temperature would be taken by our staff, and that questionnaire would have to be answered.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. Also, just to
I just want parents also to know, we could be doing random checks with temperatures. All of our buildings are equipped now with the, infrared. Dr. Lynch is going to show you. I don't know if the people at home can see at this point. No, because they only see the presentation. But sort of like that wand type of thermometer for those at home. So we will be doing random checks too, just to ensure an extra layer of safety there.
And also, again, just to clarify this issue because it's coming up now. Students, from the time they enter this building until they leave this building, are wearing masks unless a teacher or a principal or administrator gives them the opportunity under those building-specific guidelines to have a mask break.
Correct.
Okay. And then also, just to clarify also, on the questionnaire that people were filling out, indicating what grade their child was in and if they were requesting hybrid, remote, and so forth, the last question there gives them the option of indicating whether they agree or disagree to the protocols of self-quarantine on a banned location, as well as wearing a mask. I assume if someone puts down disagree, there'll be a consequence or a follow-up with that individual to make sure they appropriately address our protocols.
Well, actually, because this is guidance mandated by the state, if somebody disagrees with our protocols, they could be subject to a fine.
Thank you, Dr. Burek. Any other questions on this section from the board? Yes, Mrs. Denino.
Sorry, I just wanted
No
to,
problem.
back to taking off their masks, it would obviously have to be to eat snack and lunch as well, not just mask breaks. which I have some questions about that, but I'll save them for later. And I wanted to just go back to the email addresses of the nurses for a moment. Could we give some thought to possibly making like a covert reporting email just so it's easy, so we get it out to everybody? Because I know I get texts almost daily of what's this person's email address, or, you know, how do I get in touch with Dr. Burak? So I just think that that might be really helpful to have one place for it to go to.
Well, it's got to be 7. And in order to be manageable, it's got to be a covert person per building.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Just one more thing. If a kid is gets a medical exemption from wearing a mask, can we have them wear a face shield?
I would like to do that,
That
sure.
might be something.
Yeah,
that-
we have, in addition to the masks, we have purchased
Right.
face shields as well.
Okay.
Dr. Lynch, I know you're, you said that you got trained for the contact tracing, and I know it's on the website, I know you posted it. Could you just briefly explain the contact of a contact?
Okay, sure. So when the contact tracers refer to close contact, that is someone has COVID, we know that person has COVID, I'm next to that person for more than 15 minutes, and that's close contact without a mask. So now that's an issue. If your wife at work is in contact with somebody who has COVID, you are not in contact with someone who has COVID. You are a contact of a contact. So just because your wife is quarantining under her business's quarantine rules, you would not necessarily need to quarantine because you did not have direct contact with the person that had COVID. You're a contact of a contact.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Ms. Hanson?
Are we officially asking for masks, like extra masks on hand in the school supplies, or is the school themselves gonna sort of keep a stockpile? And I'm thinking about that with respect to the elementary school kids, because I mean, there's always that kid with the runny nose, whether they're sick or not sick, they always have the runny nose, and they're most likely going to go through multiple masks in a day. So once the mask they leave the house with gets to a point where they're not comfortable wearing that mask, what's the next mask?
So as Dr.
Yeah.
Lynch just mentioned, we have children's masks on hand for that exact reason.
Okay.
He said, if the child drops it on the way to school and it's in a puddle, obviously it can't be used, so we will have masks on hand if necessary.
In addition, I know that at our committee, people had spoken about, when you put things in a pencil case, when you send your child to school, that it can't hurt to have an extra mask,
Right.
especially if they're comfortable with a specific type of mask.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, because you brought it up now, masks are required. They're not a substitute with a shield unless there's some medical
No.
justification. So
Ma-
you must be
masks
wearing
are
a mask
required.
unless there's a protocol that would be specifically met. And if your child's in that situation, they need to speak with the principal and make sure they've met that criteria. If nothing else on this section, moving to the next one, Dr. Burak. Facilities?
Okay, thank you. Facilities, Mr. Seda?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? How's that? Any better?
Louder.
Louder, please.
Louder.
Any better?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for having me tonight. The Facilities Committee really put a lot of hard work into handling the facilities protocols that are going to be set forth tonight. We worked hand in hand with the Health and Safety Committee in order to get all of these tasks accomplished. Starting off right away, obviously, we're going to try to socially distance everybody to the maximum extent possible within each individual classroom. This is, of course, depending on the final enrollment amount within each classroom. We're going to have to figure out how many kids are actually coming and then socially distance them based on the room that everybody is assigned. We're hoping, of course, to get to 6 feet, but we're not going under that 3-foot rule. Hopefully, we'll get it as far apart as we can. We're also going to adjust all the student desks to face one direction, and hopefully we will not have any cross-contamination from children talking in different directions. The district has made a great investment in purchasing polycarbonate shielding that will go on top of every student's desk. It's approximately 22 inches wide, about a foot long. It's in a U shape that will sit on the front of the student's desk, and hopefully that, in conjunction with the face mask that we're going to be worn, we will be able to reduce the spread of any molecules or particulates that may exit the child's mouth. The district has also allocated a lot of resources to provide additional polycarbonate protection around the district in areas such as the main offices, the greeters' desks, and a few other areas around the district where a lot of contact is made. Excuse me. The district has also purchased portable sinks. These sinks will be installed in cafeterias and in other areas around the schools, in buildings where there are no sinks in the classrooms. Some of the buildings have sinks in every classroom. The kids can wash their hands in there prior to going to lunch, but a lot of them do not. So in those areas, we'll be putting portable sinks within the gymnasiums and or the cafeterias, so the children have a chance to wash their hands prior to eating lunch. The gyms are going to be converted into a cafeteria, so this room right here will now become a cafeteria. The way it's laid out right now is pretty much going to be a desk, and we'll have seating and lunch there. We'll have a couple sinks in here where the kids can wash their hands also. Masks will need to be worn while you enter the cafeteria. As you move about the room, masks will need to be worn. When you reach your seat, you take your mask off, you enjoy your lunch. When you get up to throw your garbage away, you put your mask back on and you dispose of your trash. We have increased the drop-off time for all students. We were hoping that if we allow a larger time for students to be dropped off, that might reduce a little bit of the congestion and the line getting into the building. And then with the new protocols, once we get in the building, with the forms that we need to fill out, we know there's going to be a backlog at the entrances. That's why we're really hoping that the parent participation is with us in filling out the pre-screening forms to expedite that process as quickly as we can. We installed floor markings on the floors throughout a lot of the sidewalks leading up to the buildings. It's a green strip. It's about 18 inches long. They're spaced out 6 feet apart. We're hoping that as the parents and the students approach the buildings, they'll observe these strips on the floor, maintain that 6-foot distance as they approach the building, get cleared to come in and enter the building. We've handled all the buildings so far, obviously with the exception of the high school right now. We're still working on completing the entrance due to all the construction. As soon as we're all done, we'll get those down as quick as we can so everybody can familiarize themselves with that. We are going to be installing signage around all of the schools that will direct the flow of traffic throughout the hallways and the staircases. To the best of our ability, we're going to make hallways one-directional, but please keep in mind, as Dr. Burek said before, it's going to be impossible in some areas. Some hallways lead to an exit, so it has to be a two-way hallway. Some hallways just lead to a main office, and people have to go both directions. But where it is possible that we can make it one-directional, we will make it one-directional. Staircases we can make one-directional, that's a little bit easier, but it will be a little more inconvenient for people. They'll go up one staircase, they might have to go down a hallway in order to go down the staircase. So there's going to be a little more travel time in between classes. We're trying to limit how many people are actually in the building at any given time. We're trying to limit the amount of people who don't necessarily have to be in the building. So unfortunately, we did postpone all of the facilities use permits moving forward. It's something that we were not happy to do, but unfortunately, in order to keep everybody as safe as possible, it's something that we did have to do. As of now, we're not accepting any permits for any organizations or any events. We're going to monitor this throughout the entire school year, and we will adjust it when it is appropriate. Hopefully we can do that soon, but obviously it depends on the current conditions in the environment. We're limiting the access to the buildings as much as we can. We're accepting all of our deliveries outside so that the delivery men don't have to come inside the building. We're asking that there are no drop-in visitors if somebody needs to come into a building. please call ahead, make an appointment, and we'll get you into the building as best as we can. We just really don't want to have people clustering at the front door and not socially distancing. So please make the appointment, and then we'll get you into the building. The use of student lockers in the hallways and in the gymnasiums. It's going to be virtually impossible to disinfect and clean student lockers every single day with the increased workload that all of the facility staff is going to be handling. Lockers also don't promote social distancing, so the committee has recommended that we no longer use student lockers in gyms or in hallways. The State Education Department has, as Dr. Lynch has said, has still mandated that we conduct all of our drills, our lockdown drills, our fire drills. We'll be utilizing masks when social distancing can't be maintained. In a fire drill, it's going to be virtually impossible to maintain social distancing. So masks really are going to be worn, as was said before, all the time. Frequent cleaning and disinfecting. I know everybody, this is the hot topic. We are bumping up our cleaning and disinfection protocols of all high-touch areas. We'll be cleaning the restrooms multiple times a day. I anticipate cleaning the bathrooms. The kids come into the building, a couple hours, maybe around 10 in the morning. We'll clean the restrooms. We'll have lunch, a couple hours, clean the restrooms again. And then in the end of the evening, we'll clean them a third time for the day and set it up for the following school day. In the meantime, while we're doing that, we're also going to be going around the schools and hitting all the areas of high touch. Door handles, staircase handrails, anything like that, faucets, even sink faucets inside the bathrooms, we'll go into those. The portable sink faucets, we'll be hitting those. Doorknobs, exterior doorknobs when you come into the buildings, any of the keypads for any of the teachers who use a keypad to come into the building. Anything like that, we're going to try to keep that going on a rotation throughout the entire school day. As it was said before, under the health and safety protocols, we're creating a secondary nurses area. We're going to allocate a separate space for this. Hopefully we can maintain the social distancing of 6 feet in these areas. This area will be used for somebody who is experiencing COVID-like symptoms. In the evening time, we will be disinfecting and cleaning all the classrooms again. We have purchased foggers, disinfecting foggers that we will be using every evening in all of the classrooms. The product that we'll be using will be an EPA-registered disinfectant recommended for use against COVID-19. The product has a residual kill rate of 24 hours after each application. So hopefully throughout the day, the children will still be protected for the 24-hour period, and then the next night we will come back and we will refog again, so hopefully everything stays protected throughout the day. That is in addition to the frequent areas that we're wiping down throughout the day. We're also looking to hire additional staff to assist our cleaning crews throughout the day in all of the daily disinfection that we're looking to do. We have limited staff currently within the district. This additional workload, we're trying to get additional staff to help us out with that. We will be disinfecting the exterior playgrounds once a day in the morning, and we have eliminated the use of shared electronic devices throughout the district. As Dr. Lynch had said before, we are in the process of purchasing and stockpiling a massive amount of PPE and other equipment that will hopefully help us in preventing the spread of this virus. We have 90,000 face masks right now in stock. Everybody should see my office. It looks lovely. We have face shields purchased. We have isolation gowns. We have thermometers. I have enough hand sanitizer to put on every teacher's desk in every classroom of the district. I have hand sanitizer that will be by the front doors for people when they walk in. We have disinfectant wipes. We have enough disinfectant wipes for every teacher in the district as of now. I am hoping that the current supply chain stays in effect and shortages do not come up, but I can't predict what the future brings with that, so we are trying to stay on top of it and keep it stockpiled. Obviously, all of this has unforeseen budgetary consequences that we really didn't plan on, and we're making the best with this right now, trying to handle all of this. The district has also purchased several water coolers. In some of the classrooms, the kids actually had bubblers on the sinks, water fountains on the sinks, that we'll no longer use, and we've actually purchased water coolers so that they do not have to share the bubbler. A lot of the other schools have the bottle-fill water coolers over there that you see right on the wall. The bubbler part where you lean over will be disconnected, and the bottle-fill portion will still be able to be used. We've invested in portable sinks. Like I said, they'll be in areas where hand washing is not easily obtainable, and also in the cafeterias where we can't hand wash before coming to the cafeteria. We also made a large investment in signage around the district. We are creating some of our own. We have purchased some. There'll be one-way stickers on the floors, maintain social distancing signs, one-way staircases, directional up, directional down, and a few other things going around the district. We also made an extremely large investment in the polycarbonate desk shields. That was not a minor purchase, but they were actually all delivered today, and the facilities crew is going to work tirelessly to get all of these installed on every desk that a student sits at prior to them coming into the building in a couple of weeks. The teachers will also have one of these polycarbonate protective screens on their desks, so the teachers are also protected. And hopefully with everybody having these screens and having a mask, we'll be able to obtain a comfort level and hopefully not exacerbate any COVID spread.
Thank you. And I know people are very concerned. They want to see what it may look like. So now that we have those protective barriers in, and once they get installed and everything, the district is working with our communication company, Syntax, and we will be producing a video and going through, the classrooms, the signage. We'll show you what the outside looks like, as well as the hallways, and we'll be producing that video and getting it out there as another tool so families can view that with their children prior to the start of school to give them an idea.
Thank you, Ms. Can you clarify on the cleaning of the buildings themselves? Other than what you indicated each day, there'll be a full cleaning done on a daily basis at the end of the day?
Yeah, the custodial crew will still do a regular cleaning, and then I'm trying to employ additional cleaners to handle the disinfecting.
And has any changes been made to any of the HVAC systems?
No, negative. Our HVAC systems for the buildings, a lot of them are original to the construction of the building.
All right. And I'm not sure if this will come under Mr. Vlekas on instructional, but as far as lunch goes, the high school students, if someone could clarify, they're allowed to go outside for lunch, and then they'll be when they come back in at lunch. I guess there's a protocol for that.
And Mr. Seda, can you also just, since the ventilation, since we can't change our ventilation systems, they do circulate fresh air?
Yes. The ventilation systems do circulate fresh air. They are up to code. I am currently having our contractor go through each and every unit to make sure everything is functioning properly. If it's not functioning properly, he's going to be giving me a written report, and we'll work on making any repairs that need be. But yeah, we are.
But we do have permission to use air conditioners?
Yes, we do.
And windows can be open
Windows
as well?
can be open, air conditioners can be utilized, and air conditioners should be utilized bringing in the fresh air, not on the recirculate feature. Room fans are not recommended to be used. SED does not want to see a room fan being used. But yeah, air conditioners are allowed.
And with construction at the high school, what would the entrance look like on the first day of school? Where will that take place?
We're looking right now at the courtyard entrance. The courtyard is going to be cleaned up in the next couple of days. We're going to be installing some concrete in there, cleaning up the area a little bit. So under the breezeway, going in by the library entrance, that will be the main entrance coming into the building.
And that'll be the sole entrance for everyone who's coming in or out?
No, in the back.
He's going to use a back entrance too?
He doesn't know that. Oh, okay.
So there's going to be two entrances used. So that's the main entrance to the building. But for student entry, there's going to be two entrances. This entrance to the gym and the one at the courtyard. So it's going to be 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. And that's where the protocols will be conducted.
Right. So to clarify, 9 and 10th grade will come in one entrance, 11th to 12th will come in another.
That's correct.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mrs. Danino?
I'll apologize because I have a lot of questions. Will there be scheduled hand washing for students at all in classrooms? Do we know?
I didn't schedule any hand washing for anybody, but
I think that's a teacher,
Okay, and that,
it's a teacher function.
okay. The gym floor with those sinks, will there be something just protecting it? I'm just concerned with that.
if it becomes a problem, we'll protect them. We will
Okay.
have mops handy.
Okay, also you discussed the extended drop-off. Can you, is that, someone gonna explain that a little more? Is that on
Well,
every?
that's part of the instructional day. That's
So that'll go
Dr.
there.
Villekas, we know, we're giving everyone a half an hour entrance.
Okay, and back to what Billy said before about lunch, being an open campus here, many of the places you can't eat in, so they would be able to bring their food back and sit here? Okay.
Yes.
At the end of dismissal in, I would say more in the elementary level, are there any protocols for parents on the grounds to wear excuse me, masks? And are they able to congregate on the playgrounds after school? Is there going to be signage up about that to take them quickly, just to try and mitigate, as Rob was saying before, keeping them, separated in school, but if they all run on the playground after school with their masks off, are we able to do anything with that?
Well, once again, that's where the partnership that Dr. Lynch mentioned before, if the parents come at dismissal time, parents are close to each other, parents should be wearing masks and should be role models for the children so that we work in partnership to at least educate all and share the same common message.
Okay, and regarding shared materials, they're not sharing electronic devices. Are they still sharing things? And this probably will come
That's
up.
going to be under Dr. Villekas,
Okay.
yes.
And the desk cleaning. I know in elementary school, one child sits at a desk. In middle and high school, they cleaned in the morning and in the afternoon.
No,
Well,
the-
that fogger,
Oh, right.
one of those things is the 24-hour residue, so it kills the germs up to 24 hours. So that's helping to mitigate
Perfect.
those issues.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Mrs.
Dr.
Si-
Burek, students at the middle school and high school level, if they wanted to bring their own wipes to wipe down their desks, they're free to do that,
Absolutely.
correct?
Yes, yes, children
Um,
can bring their own if they need to.
I just have another question. Regarding the floor markings that are installed on the walkways leading up to the buildings, are we going to have anybody outside, at least for the first couple of weeks, just, in case there's like a backlog of people, just keeping the people separated until they get used to this?
That's a very good question, and I want everyone to realize that in the beginning, until everyone gets all the protocols down and the procedures down smoothly, it will take some time to make sure that everybody is following. And by the time, you adjust, if you have a half hour to get to school in the morning, you never know. You may start out being in the beginning of that half hour, and by the end of the week, it may be later on the half hour. But you'll find, what suits your groove, so to speak, and then we'll get into that pattern. So in the beginning, just remember, it's going to take some time to iron that out. Day one, it's not going to be perfect. I just want everyone to realize September 8th will be the first time teachers and kids are together since March. That's a long time. So to come back into that, to reacclimate yourself to that environment, so I just want to make sure that that expectation is managed to that it may take some time just to iron that out.
Well, will there be anybody from the building that's outside, just making sure that people stay where they should be for the first week or two until people are used to this?
That's really a building level question. So, whatever staff we have available, same thing in the morning. The monitor is going to be busy,
Okay.
letting people in. So however, principals are going to handle that. Obviously, the high school has the security guard, so that person's available. I don't know if you can hear me when I'm doing that.
Mrs. Hanson?
With respect to the classroom configuration, sorry. With respect to classroom configuration, it's 6 feet ideally, but it could also, with the desk, the dividers, it could be 3 feet, right? Okay. And the dividers are those, that's elementary school and middle school?
The dividers are going to be for every student in the district.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
and with
tho-
with the classrooms, we also went through every elementary school, every classroom, and we removed all unnecessary clutter throughout every room to kind of stripped it down to the bare bones to try to get as much space as we can.
Right.
Carpets will no longer be used to be sat on. They'll now be desk space on top of that. So we really tried to get the kids as far apart as the space would allow.
Now, in terms of the dividers themselves, the installation of those dividers, are they screwed into the desks? Are we attaching them with Velcro? Like,
Double-sided tape.
good. So on the other side of this, the desks are still fine.
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't want to penetrate the desk and ruin the desk.
Mr. Pascal?
Is there going to be any structure? I know we have the expanded drop-off time. Is there going to be any structure to that? I worry about everybody coming at the last minute, especially after the first week. When people start getting, sleeping in a little longer and things like that. Is there going to be any structure, A through M, or?
Once again, I'm going to allow the principals to be able to handle that
Okay.
at their building level because they know how best the flow is going to come
And the same thing
in.
with dismissal time? Will there be
Same
staggered
thing, let the
dismissal?
principals
will-
decide, which entrances, which exits.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Rob, that really just highlights the importance of masks. In every jurisdiction, and George is a horrific one, and so they should have, it's when they're not wearing masks, because at some point you can't help but get into that close radius in passing. But as long as everyone is wearing masks, then that helps address the majority of issues. Ms. Sadie, can you address, you indicated earlier, this will be a room that the high school would have lunch in, there would be desks in here, and they'd be socially distanced. What's lunch going to look like in the middle schools and elementary schools?
Probably in the gymnasiums also. It's going to look very similar. We're going to put a student desk or a small table. They'll be 6 feet apart. It'll be very similar to what I just mentioned.
And again, any specifics about those questions will be addressed by the school principals on that issue.
Some of the gyms may not be big enough. We might have to do it in the gymnasium and the cafeteria, depending on enrollment, depending what the numbers come back at. Until we have all those final numbers, we're not going to know
Right.
the
And
exact
again,
setup.
as mentioned in the very beginning, this has never been done before by anybody anywhere. So we're going to remain flexible and see how things work. So there may be a change to what we're saying today. We may find out 2 days into school there's a better way of doing it. So we all have to understand that and be a little bit patient with the process as it begins. Thank you, Mr. Sater.
Thank you.
Mr. Belmont,
I'm sorry, Mr. Leckie.
just one question on the polycarbonate shielding. I know other districts have assigned the shielding to specific kids, so they actually bring them back and forth to school. So are we doing that, or is that going to be specific to
it's
the
being
desk?
specifically mounted to the desk in the elementary schools. It will
Okay.
be the child's desk, so it will be
So it's actually
that
mounted?
one.
and-
But in the upper grades, the students will move from class to class. This will be affixed to the desk.
Okay, thank you.
Next section, Dr. Burek.
Okay. Going to turn it over now to Dr. Belekas to go over the instructional plan. Louder. He's got to speak louder.
Hello? Yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you. I know that Mr. Belmont used a very important word when we come to the instructional plan, which is flexibility. I know that there are right now, the first plan that we're going to be talking about, this is our current plan as of today. Later on in this presentation, I will be talking about what a fully remote plan would look like as well, just in case we would have to pivot to that at some point during the school year. So the first plan here, with the elementary schools, I know that folks are currently making a choice between the gold and the green models. Whatever choice is being made would be a commitment for the entire first marking period. I know that some folks were asking, could we push back the date of that choice? The problem is that we need to schedule these children as soon as possible. As everybody's been alluding to today, these are unprecedented times for all of us, and we do need to make sure that we schedule all of the children's classes, services, and so on, and we really need time to plan that. And one of the things you are going to see here with the green and the gold model, we want to try to keep the children on pace with each other, and there will be some times that it'll be possible to do a live stream between what's happening in the classroom and what's happening at home. So all of those schedules really take some time to marry. So the first model here, the gold model would be in person every day at the elementary level. Students would arrive between 8:30 and 9. I know that Mr. Paskov just, had some concerns about how that would work out. We are hoping too that if you do see when you're dropping your kids off a lot of people coming at a certain time, that people will make adjustments too. I don't think too many people want to stand outside online for too often, so I think that, hopefully that natural idea of trying to create some type of flow will happen. And yes, the principals can have some flexibility on trying to, massage that as need be. I think all of these things that we're going to talk about today, whether it's the arrival, whether it's the instruction, how the technologies are working, because this is all new to us, the first couple days and weeks, we're going to be figuring it out. By the time we start reaching into the school year, getting in a few weeks, and by the time we get to October, we should have a lot of these things ironed out, but there's always going to be something that no matter how hard we try, that's going to be unanticipated. And I do know a lot of thoughts been put into this plan, so we've tried to anticipate as much as we can, but there's always some kind of kinks that we're going to have to definitely work out as we see them come along. The next piece here, once everybody arrives, they're going to be going to their classrooms at 9 o'clock. The instructional day will begin. There will be classes that have typically happened in other rooms. We do have in each of our elementary buildings an art room, a science room, a library, and so on, music rooms. We are not going to be having the classes travel out to those rooms. Instead, the teachers will be pushing into the students' classrooms, so that is a change. So any of your special area classes, so as I mentioned a moment ago, art, science, library, and general music will be push-in classes. There will be some musical classes that, obviously involve instruments or singing lessons and such. Those will happen in the music spaces. So there will be spaces dedicated to those music classes. They may or may not be our traditional rooms in each building, depending on what, a group of students and how many there are. The lessons will be lessons only. What that really means is that we are not having any large ensembles. I know that people have come to concerts here before in this gymnasium, and there have been chorus groups of 120 kids. There's no way that anywhere in our spaces are we going to be able to socially distance 120 singers at a 12 feet distance. It's not happening. So we are not really looking at ensemble groups. That doesn't mean, though, that if we have a large space available, that the lesson group might be 10 kids. So it may not be the smallest lesson groups that we see right now that, may have a handful. We may be able to go a little bit larger depending on, again, what spaces are available at the time that those classes are offered. But again, they will all be considered lessons only. I know that when we start talking about physical education, again, one of the requirements there is a 12-foot distance if it's indoors. That's, again, a hard thing to do. So we are hoping that we can have as many classes outside as possible. So the elementary kids for physical education will go outside. If they are indoors, we'll work on topics such as mindfulness or social emotional learning. So we do have alternative plans for days that we can't have the kids outside and physically active. In the past, we have pushed in what are called academic intervention services or AIS services, which are our reading and math teachers coming into the classrooms to help children who need those specific types of service. We cannot really push more people into the classroom just so people understand what a classroom is going to look like. In the past, we've had a lot of kidney-shaped tables and collaborative spaces and kids working together. We're not going to be seeing that anymore. We're going to have a very traditional look to our classroom. So kids are going to be sitting in rows, facing in the same direction. As Mr. Seda had mentioned before, those desks are going to be as socially distant as possible. So we're not going to be able to cluster kids in a classroom. So those services that were AIS will be pulled out of those classes. The last bullet here underneath the gold model that was, again, mentioned a little bit earlier is that we are going to schedule mass breaks into the school day. The class will be able to come out of their classroom, because like I said before, all of these other services are being pushed in. We're going to have the kids come out of their classroom. They're going to be able to go outside and breathe for a little while. Obviously, as Mrs. Danino pointed out too, there will be times in the building where kids are going to be able to take off their mask and breathe because they are consuming food. So there will be, those opportunities. And as Mr. Seda said, I think we're going to be using as many spaces at the elementary school as necessary to keep the kids safe. So we may be using gymnasiums and cafeterias as lunchrooms if need be. So we are going to try to use as much space as we can to allow the kids to consume their food safely. The second model here, the green model, is the fully remote model. In the elementary schools, we are going to dedicate teachers as remote instructors. Later on I'm going to be talking about something very different at the secondary model. But in the elementary schools, like I said, there will be some sections that will be scheduled in our buildings, and there will be some sections scheduled outside of our buildings. The ones that are scheduled outside that are receiving the remote instruction, they will be following a very similar schedule to the people that are in our classrooms, and they will be possibly taking some classes with these students in school that would be live streamed in particular. That could be your special area classes like art, science, library, general music. They may be in a classroom shared, with the people that are in person. What that would look like would be very similar to what I'll be describing in a moment in the secondary level, where the teacher would be live streaming. You could see the lesson going on the board, or if they're using a document camera, you might be able to see, like if it's an artist trying to teach a drawing technique, we have cameras that actually can go over the person's hands, and they can demonstrate the technique so that the kids can see it on the board behind them, and the kids that are at home can see that over the computer screen, how that technique is working. What you would have during that live stream would be the teacher's voice, any voice of the kids in the room, and it would go vice versa as well. So if you're talking at home, the kids in the classroom can hear you. We do have a prototype room that we've been using in the high school. It's been a very good setup. I thank the technology team for that so that we can practice and see what these type of things look like. One of the features that we saw that worked out very nicely was that there's a speaker system typically in most of our classrooms that can project the kids' voices from home through the ceiling so that everyone in the classroom can hear the children at home pretty clearly. One of the things that we did learn, I know we spoke a little bit about before when we started talking about facilities, keeping windows open, air conditioners on. We tested these type of things with all different conditions in classrooms. It may be necessary more than ever for a teacher to repeat the answers of the quiet kid in the back of the room. So if a kid does speak softly, we did learn that, you may not be able to hear them too well. The teacher would then have to say, Mr. Seda, that was a great answer. I really like the way that you said. So there are going to be some changes to the way that we instruct, and I think that, again, that's all part of that learning process. And I do thank all of our staff members that came in and helped play in the prototype room so that we could try to iron some of these things out before we've had students. It's been a really eye-opening experience for them and for us, and I think that we're all benefiting from each other's care and knowledge, so that is something that's been very good. Yeah, sorry.
Teachers in different departments came in and volunteered their time and did some members, one teacher in the department was the teacher and other department members were students in the class, so they volunteered their time to go through this and work on some of these things so that we can streamline it. And then they in turn become turnkey trainers. This is what I learned, and they can share how to conduct the classroom as best as possible. But Dr. Belekas, before you go to secondary, physical education, specifically, how is that going to work, especially if you're a remote learner? So if you choose the green model and
Sure.
phys ed is outside, because on good weather days, phys ed will be outside, but what is a remote learner going to do?
Okay, so in the physical education classrooms, if the lesson is outside, we are not going to be streaming from out on a field. So what would be expected is that the children would be completing a physical education log. What is very important, obviously, with physical education is that we have children up and moving at some point during the day. We don't want all of the kids to be stationary in front of a computer. For the kids that are in person, they can fill out their log by documenting whatever activity they did outside with the teacher. We would ask that the kids remote either do something during that period or something during the week that would constitute some physical type activity so that they can be active and moving as well. If the physical education class is indoors, obviously, if it's in a classroom, we can send a live stream of physical education. So if we're doing a mindfulness or a social emotional learning activity, we can, project that home. Yes, if we are on the field, that would be an impossibility. So we would ask that kids would document that they are physically active. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to shift gears here to the secondary schools. So the secondary schools would be both middle schools and the high school. I know that we are also making a choice here between this time the green and blue models. And we ask again that you make this commitment for the entire first marking period. So the green model would be all remote instruction. It would follow the exact school day of those that are in school, so that you would be going period by period the same way that your peers would be going in the classrooms. And the majority of classes, like I just mentioned, would be live streamed. The exception would be outdoor PE classes for the very reason that we just talked about in the elementary school. We can't live stream a class that's on the field. If the PE class happens to be indoors, again, we would have that opportunity to live stream it. And similarly, the students would be expected to log their physical activities in lieu of attending a class that day. With the blue model, it's going to, like I said, follow the same schedule as the green. So the kids that are in the blue model will actually be in classes with the kids in the green model. I can't really demonstrate this for the people at home, but for the people that are in the audience here, if I'm teaching a class, I'm looking out over my tablet at my classroom. Mr. Paskov, can you give me an answer for that? Oh, that is a great answer, Mr. Paskov. Thank you so much. Now let me look at my screen here. Oh, Mr. Belmont on my screen, what did you think about what Mr. Paskov said? I can facilitate as a teacher interaction between people that are in a room and people that are at home. So if you are in the blue model, that doesn't mean that you won't be interacting with kids in the green. They will be in that same environment. The difference for the blue model students is that they will be in school every other day, and they will be at home on the opposite days, so that they will be part of the class regardless. So sometimes they'll be in person, sometimes they would be remote. What we are talking about here, and I know this is very important to the parent representatives on the committee, we are trying to keep families together as best as possible. So what we're looking at is A to L, M to Z. We did a data study of the last names in our district that gave us that splitting point. That was the closest point on every cohort pretty much, to split them evenly. And we wanted to keep families, if your family is going on the first day, we wanted to be able to allow people to go back to work and send all their kids to school on that day. So that is why that split is occurring that way. One of the tricky things, though, scheduling-wise, is that we don't want kids that come in every other day to miss a teacher in person. So let's say you only have a class that's on an odd day. We couldn't just keep our 6-day schedule, because you would never see the odd teacher if you were scheduled on the even days. So what we did to be a little bit creative here, we are going to do day 1, day 1, day 2, day 2. It doesn't mean that we're going to teach the same lesson 2 days in a row. What it means is that the schedule for that building will be the same 2 days in a row, so that you'll always see every one of your teachers at some point in the cycle. So in essence, we've created a 12-day cycle that guarantees at some point you will have an opportunity to interact with your teacher both in person and at home during that cycle. So that's a little bit of a tricky nuance, but it was to make sure that everybody did have that opportunity to see all their teachers, regardless if it was on an even day class or an odd day class.
So, Mr. Vallekis,
Yes.
just interject quick, because I know a lot of students actually asked about that. So, the first day of school is whatever it may be, Wednesday. That's day 1. The next day is also going to be day 1.
Correct.
If a holiday comes in between it, it just pushes over to the next time. So it's not just 1-1. It's just first day is day 1, second day is day 1, and so forth.
Correct, yes. So basically it's the same premise of the calendar right now. When it goes 1 through 6 and the holidays in the middle, it reconnects. Same type of thing would happen here, except for it's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on. So that, yes, we would connect around weekend, a holiday, whatever it may be. But it really does allow everybody to have that opportunity. And we know that kids at the secondary level do have classes that are sometimes only meet every other day. There are lab periods, there are gym classes, there are health, writing lab. There are many classes that you don't necessarily see every day, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity, like I said, to see those teachers both, through the remote and in person. The next two bullets here all have to do with arrival times. Similar to the elementary schools, with the blue model, we are trying to space out when students arrive to school. So for both middle schools, we would hope that students would arrive between 7:30 and 8 a.m. I apologize. So between 7:30 and 8 a.m., it would give that half-hour window. At the high school, because not all kids start at the same period, we would talk about two different half-hour windows. So if you have a period 1 class, we would expect that you arrive between 7 and 7:30. And if you have a period 2 class, we'd expect you to arrive between 7:30 and 8 a.m. And as Mr. Paskov said, it is important that we don't have everybody trying to show up at the last minute, because if we are doing checks and we may need to take a few children's temperatures on the way in, we can't have everybody show up at once and have them expect to be at class on time. So I do think that, we will, again, have to try to make sure we space those things out, and I know the principals will work on trying to keep the traffic moving. So that's the morning arrivals. And again, as we had said at the elementary level, it's a little trickier in the secondary level with the mass breaks, but I do know that the principals will be working that out within their buildings, and that is something that they can address of how they're handling it within each of their own buildings there.
And remember, with the high school being an open campus, when they have a free period, they can go outside and have their mass break at that point. Also, can you just want to reiterate, since the 6 through 12 is, if they're on that hybrid model, that should a child need to go into a quarantine for one reason or another, whether they're sick or not sick, or it's a direct contact with contact tracing and everything, because they have access on their alternating days when they're home, they can continue to be instructed remotely for the days that they're quarantined, correct?
Absolutely. There should be no reason that a child at the secondary level can't transition to the home environment very quickly, because they will have classmates already doing so. So that it will all be set up. They won't have to change teachers. At the elementary level, that poses a problem because it's a different teacher and a different class. At the secondary level, when you're home, you're in with the same teacher, same class. So that is a different nuance there.
So just to clarify that, so if you're a high school, and let's look at it two ways. Look at it between a child who's sick or one that might be quarantined. If you're at the high school or secondary level, and whether you're sick or quarantined, you have the ability to go remotely. So for you, it would be seamless.
Correct.
And even though you may be, the question of an absence, if you're quarantined, that's an excused absence, I understand, Dr. Burek?
It's an absence.
It's
though,
an
yes.
absence, right. Now, at the elementary school level, the difference is, I assume we're treating them, if they're home sick and they have an injury or an illness in their home, we're treating that like we would, and you're a in-school student and you get sick, we're treating that the way it would if you had chickenpox and this was last year, correct?
Yes, that would be the case. Really, unfortunately, like I said before, it's not the same setup in the sense that there's a teacher dedicated to remote, and their class may be full, so I can't switch teachers, and also too, you're switching a kid back and forth is not necessarily good instructionally for them either.
Right.
We are going to make a change, and we are going to try to keep the elementary teachers and the secondary teachers obviously close enough to each other that if we do change kids mid-year, meaning at the end of that first marking period, we can make the transition. But we don't want to do flip-flopping. I don't think that's a good instructional practice.
Right. But it is an interesting tidbit for those that are asking for any major difference between that at the elementary level. One of the advantages is if you have a reason that you need to stay home, you're seamless in what you were doing, at least class-wise.
At the secondary level.
At the secondary level.
Secondary
No,
level.
if you're an elementary school, clarify for me, if you're an elementary school student and you're a remote student, you're home all the time taking the remote classes, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Well,
Right. So I'm saying-
that's anyone who's green. You're home all the
Correct,
time.
correct, just
Yes.
clarifying that.
And I think that was misleading on the Q&A, because I received several questions after the Q&A went out, because I think it was the way the question was phrased. It was, if you keep your child home as a precaution. Well, what does precaution mean? It has to actually mean something. Are you a direct contact? Are you directly exposed? Or are you just you heard somebody may have it, and you just, as a precaution, you want to keep your child home. You cannot switch. If you're a gold elementary student, you cannot switch to green remotely. That's why the answer was no so quickly for that. So that's why some of those questions, you really, as we encounter them, you have to understand the whole contact tracing piece of it, and you can't, on the elementary level, you cannot switch between gold and green in and out all the time. We are assigning teachers to students for that class. So that's why we're asking it's a one marking period commitment at
So let's-
least. So I know other people are saying, asking the question, well, what if after a week my child, really can handle it and everything? Then I really have to urge you, if you think that may be the case, then you need to choose remote from the beginning. Don't put your child through that and put them through that anxiety. Choose remote from the beginning, because you're not going to be able to switch to remote after only a week.
But let's play that out now. So, and maybe for the board members, this section separates from the other. So, Dr. Burek, in that particular area, if a student on every level cannot switch until, so are you going to be allowing a switch to be made on a per semester basis? So there'll be a period at the beginning of each semester where they have
No,
that?
we're not going to go back and forth. By after the first marking period, you should know what
Right,
you
so-
feel most comfortable with. And we're also asking, and I believe I had put it in my communication, by November 1st, you have to let us know. So this way we have basically that month to make any
Right, so it's not throughout
changes.
the year. You'll have that opportunity after the first
correct.
mark period to do that. All right. And then I think it's helpful while we're in this area that we address these issues and move on. So, Mr. Yeager?
I was going to say, do we, I know we have a date when you want everybody to have their choice of
This Friday.
this Friday. Now, if people don't make their choice, do we have a default? So
If
someone
pe-
doesn't send it in, are we assuming they are all
If
remote,
people
or-
don't make that choice, then we're assuming that they're going to be coming in, because the normal school year would be everyone would be in.
Mr. Black, now, whether you're a remote student, and these questions are both secondary and elementary, whether you're a remote student or a hybrid or live, whatever it may be, the grading and testing will be the same. There's no disadvantage from that process, whether you're in school or at home. Is that
No,
correct?
there's no disadvantage, and we need to realize this, and I know this is something actually when I spoke with the instruction committee that we have to keep in mind. They will have some students who are home every day. So to give an assessment in class and think that, if you're in the secondary level, I can give it in class to the first group today and to the second group tomorrow. Well, I still have a third group that's at home.
Right.
So whatever kind of assessments we're looking at, we're going to have to be very creative on how we grade children. So everything may not be traditional tests per se, quote unquote. We will have other types of assessments that teachers will choose to give. We do know from when we were, students years ago, there were assessments that happened in our homes. All of us at some point wrote a paper. So there are different ways that people will assess. You may see things like that. You may see more open-ended type questions where, kids are going to have to create something on their own. There are some really cool features of the LMSs that we purchased, which are our learning management systems. There are assessment tools in there where, if I start writing like the answer to a math problem on my screen with my stylus, this machine can record me doing it. The teacher can watch as I erase what I'm doing. The teacher can watch as I sit there for 10 minutes while I'm looking on my phone to get the answer to copy it in.
Right.
And they'll see that there was a big gap there. So you're not going to give a whole test like that, but you can give a very quick one-question formative assessment or an exit ticket or something that you can use for a score and be very creative. And I don't think we want to pigeonhole a teacher's creativity of ways that they can score children. So there are going to be tons of different options, and I think that, yes, those options are going to work whether you're here or
Right.
you're not here.
So it's different, but it's equal, and I assume that's the same with the curriculum. We can clarify that whether you're remote or live, you're getting the same curriculum.
Absolutely.
Styles
You're
are
going to be
different.
learning the same material, and I think that, one of the things, since you just mentioned the word curriculum, and I know I'm going to address this later, but I think it's important for folks to know, we are going to be looking at the curriculum very different this year. We are going to have shorter periods, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because of the passing time that was
Right.
mentioned earlier. We need to compact the curriculum. We also need to keep the curriculum compacted so we can address some of the learning gaps that may have been created, from our time last spring. So we're going to be talking about assessing what kids know and building from there so that we can make the grade level curriculum accessible to all and build a strong foundation, because, we're not just trying to prepare these kids for this year. We want to make sure that they're really prepared for their studies, moving throughout our system and beyond. So
Correct.
we're going to try to make sure that that curriculum's tight and hits all those big ideas so that kids are prepared for whatever studies they're going to do in the future.
The remote learning teachers that we have, that's our current staff?
Well, that may be our current staff plus a few other staff members. We are looking at options there. I know that when we talked about it at the elementary schools, we are trying to keep as many in-class sections as possible so that those numbers stay down, so that we're trying to keep our spaces occupied with teachers, as well as adding maybe a few more teachers to work remotely with students.
And here's one that came in, Dr. Bjark, also, which if a student moves into, I'm not sure who this goes for, if a student moves into our district on September 10th or 15th or October 1st, how will they determine where they're going to be, which program they're in, or which class
Yeah,
they're in?
we'll be asking them,
As they move
we'll be
in.
telling them our two options, and they'll be able to choose.
And will our programs like the Honor Society still be able to take place, and our student government and so forth?
There will be certain clubs that will be taking place, and Dr. Bjark will be addressing that later in this presentation.
Okay, so I'll say that, 'cause I guess some will, maybe Art National Honor Society, others may have to take a different job. I guess we'll get to LMS. Is there any before or after school programs?
Can you wait? That's
yeah,
another
yeah.
section.
Okay.
There's another
Go ahead.
section.
I'm just, there's a lot of questions coming.
Dr. Walekis, I have a question. The remote learning teachers,
That was Joe Mott.
that's just for
I'm not
elementary.
the expert.
The remote learning teachers, that's just for elementary?
Correct. The teachers, those would be classroom teachers assigned to a section that's, working from home, correct?
And as far as in middle school and high school, how will attendance be taken for the students that are not actually in the classroom?
When you're in a live meeting, and I know that many of you have participated because you've been on the board meeting calls, on the right-hand side, if you populate it, is something called a participant list, and that list would allow you to see who's in on the call, so it's actually pretty easy for a teacher to take attendance. Not only do you have like the little boxes on the screen, but you also have a participant list that you can use for attendance purposes.
So if a student is supposed to be in school, live in school that day, but let's say they have a cold and they stay home, do they need to notify the teacher or the school ahead of time that they're going to be doing it remote that day, or it'll just pop up on the screen and that's sufficient?
Well, the school is going to be notified just because that's something you tell the nurse when you're absent from school. You call the nurse's office to let them know you're not coming to school. So I think that
So it's
procedure would be
the
the
same
normal.
procedure? Okay.
Okay, question regarding the elementary schools with respect to the gold model. If none of the specials are taking place in those spaces and it's all pushed in, walk me through how we're going to use all that wonderful empty space in
not empty.
those rooms. Like, is that where the kids would theoretically take their mask break? If it's pouring rain, will they
Oh,
go into
I'm not going to say any space is going to be empty or unaccounted for.
Okay.
Like I had mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why we need to find out early what people are doing is that we're going to pretty much use every nook and cranny available to us for something. All the reading and math services, as I mentioned before, used to be pushed into a classroom.
Okay.
If I need to find a space, I'm looking at every space available. So there may be some of those spaces available for those type of programs. We have a lot of students who receive special education services. Again, I need spaces for them because the spaces that they're currently using may not be large enough to house whatever number in a small group and give even 3 feet of distance. So all of those spaces are going to be used for other purposes. I don't want you to think that rooms are going to be empty.
Okay.
Rooms are going to be reassigned to some other purpose.
Well, I know there was some discussion because one of the buildings has a pretty small staff room, like a break room, for lack of a better word, like a staff lunch area. And there was talk of finding a space that was a little more conducive to social distancing.
Correct, and we're going to be using, again, like we said about student lunchrooms, we'll be using extra spaces for the purposes of staff lunchrooms as well. Every space that we have, we're going to find a purpose for, and that's why it's very important, like I said, that we know who's coming in, because then I know that Heather Hansen student is coming in, and I need to find a space for Heather's OT, because she has a one-on-one OT consult. So there are things that I'm going to need to find spaces for, and once I know who those students are, I can figure out with the building principals how the spaces are going to be used. So there's a lot of moving parts. I don't envy the building principals right now, because they're going to have a lot of juggling to do once this information comes in. And all those spaces, like I said, are going to be used for something. I can't tell you today what it is. In 2 weeks, I'm hoping that, the building principals can tell you period by period, a little bit more about what we're doing.
Okay.
Dr. Obelakis, I'm a little concerned about the cycle schedule for the kids with the day one, day 2, and it tends to get confusing. I mean, even if you have a single day one, if you're out a couple of days, or if you have a break, like say the holiday break, when kids come back, they tend to forget what day it was the day prior to the break. Is there any possible way to differentiate between day one for A through L versus day one through M through Z? Maybe
Yeah,
with a
I'm
name change?
assuming there's going to be some type of A/B type system,
Okay.
so that you could have that. And also, too, the one other bonus, I guess, of using a learning management system is that anybody in here that's familiar with like an Outlook calendar, it does have like a calendar feature, so that could help kids keep track of, days of the cycle as well.
Do we list the days of the cycle on the district website?
We do have those on our district calendar, but they will have to be altered because the print version went to print before, obviously we came up with these plans. So that would be something that can be done on the buildings calendars on the website. It just won't be on the print calendar that will end up on people's
Okay,
refrigerators.
so that's even more reason that we have to differentiate, because if it just says day one on the district calendar, you're not going to know which group it is.
Correct.
If
You're
you
right.
lost
Yes.
place,
You're right.
right? Okay. thank
Absolutely,
you.
yes. And that's why I think, again, the newest and probably the best feature that we have now that we hadn't had in the past, like in the spring, is the idea of a learning management system, because it's an awesome communication tool. It can keep track of schedules for children. It could pass out messages. I know that one of the frustrations that some folks had is that, when they had younger children, we weren't giving emails to elementary kids and middle school kids that were under 13 years of age. So their parents were getting those emails, and some parents I know were saying, look, you're putting a ton of emails in my work email. I got to sort through all this stuff and get it out to my kid. It's a lot of heavy lifting at home. When we have a learning management system, we could pass that information through the system, and the students can get it directly. And if a parent so chooses, there are parent logins where parents can actually look into the system and see what's going on in their kids' classes. So they'll have what I'll call read-only access, which means they can't do the work for their student, but they can see exactly what the student's seeing, so they can, have an idea of, is my student telling me the truth? Did they complete their assignment or not? I can go in and look. So that there is an opportunity to go in and look at certain things.
Do we control the calendar on PowerPoint or no? PowerSchool.
I'm not sure what a calendar.
I'm just
on
saying that's another
PowerSchool is,
option.
But
This-
the calendar, in the learning management system, that we
Should be
can
able to do
control.
what you're
Yeah.
indicating. That's perfect.
Quick question. So the elementary level, they're still staying the typical 1 through 6 and just the middle and high school, so they won't be on the same rotation?
Correct. The elementary schools are very different in the sense that, they don't need this. This is being put in because of the idea of the every other day. At the elementary schools, what happens typically, and this is why it's not advantageous as much down there, in the secondary schools, it's a lot of A's and B's, meaning you have something on the even, something on the odd. At the elementary school, you have a lot of things that happen once a cycle. And if I put the 2 times a cycle in a row, you'll have 2 of that class, and you won't see that teacher for another 10 days. So it's not as ideal down at the elementary school to do it, so it's better to keep it that 1 through 6 down there.
No, I totally understand the rationale. I'm just thinking as
Okay,
a
sure.
parent of keeping track. of my
No,
kids.
absolutely, and I know it is a little
That's
bit
why
of juggling.
district-wide, we
Yes.
can't change it.
Right.
Yes.
But they don't have to change for phys ed, so it won't be that much of a big deal to remind my middle schooler.
Mr. Belakis, Dr. Belakis, speaking about phys ed in the high school with the construction, the lack of field space, and obviously the lack of a gym, What is the plan for phys ed on the high school level?
You know, right now the plan is primarily push in and having the kids keep physical education logs of doing something, you know, physically active. I do know that the high school is looking at trying to see what other options may be available, but obviously, you know, we can't go out on the field here. There are big trucks out there that are impeding that, you know, as an opportunity. But I do know that Mr. Martellotti is continuing to brainstorm with his staff. But as of today, I'm going to say it's a push-in type lesson where kids are going to work on social emotional things. They'll do mindfulness activities and so on. You know, unfortunately, this nice space here, as we heard earlier, will be serving as a cafeteria space.
So the phys ed class in the high school would meet in a classroom?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Fortunately, that is one content area that the state gave us a little laxed requirements for, so we don't have to meet a certain number of minutes because of that.
Okay. I'm going to move on, just so people understand this too. I guess it's not a bad thing to say. Everything we just spoke about, we had focus groups within the instruction committee because it was a very large group. You know, I know that Dr. Burak had mentioned that, you know, there were over 100 participants. About half of them were on this committee. So just so we understand, there were a lot of people involved in our instructional plan, and because of that, we did have different focus groups. So everything we spoke about up to this point had to do with this scheduling focus group. Another focus group that met was called the mental health of students. And what we talked about here, we did put out a survey prior that asked students to talk a little bit about what's been going on during COVID times so that we could try to assess students' mental health before we come back to school. You know, that information was for our support staff only so that they can prepare and know that, you know, in the opening days of school, we need to check in on certain students and make sure that they're transitioning well. I think one of the things that we need to realize is that obviously every student is going to have a culture shock coming back here in some way, shape, or form because they haven't been in a normal school setting since March, and it's going to look very different when they come back this time versus the way they left. So we are going to be pushing into classrooms to talk to students again and let them know what supports are available to them. We want to make sure that kids aren't in these classes suffering and us not knowing. So we are going to be pushing in. The physical education department is going to play a key role in that, working with our support staff to make sure that students' mental health needs are addressed. We also know that because of all the things that have gone on in students' lives, you know, there's been a lot of trauma, a lot of different losses that they've experienced, that until we make them feel comfortable back in school, they're not going to be able to access the academic learning. So we are going to make sure, especially in the early stages, that we're trying to transition them in well. One of the important things that we need to make sure of when we're talking to children is that we're using common language. So I do know that one of the important things that the support staff we're talking about is trying to use the same words so that when we're at our IST meetings, we know exactly what each other are talking about. Another important factor here, and it's back to that partnership idea, you know, we did put out a lot of resources last year, and one of the things that we did here was I didn't know how to navigate them all. There was a lot of resources that you made available, but I wasn't sure exactly what to do for my child. So we have been spending time organizing our resource list, as well as finding different applications. You know, there is a Nassau County app that you can put in some of the things your kid is experiencing, and it can match you to resources. So we're trying to find more things like that that might be a little bit prescriptive if you do need help navigating supports outside, as well as utilizing our own staff. And we are trying to help parents, you know, find ways to support their kids at home. One of the other things that we thought was very important, not only to help with the transition, but to make sure we're doing mental health check-ins throughout the school year. You know, it is important to us that we make sure that kids are, again, seeking out help if they need it. And we are going to try, especially with the youngest children, to make sure we have familiar faces around when they come back. Because it is going to be, again, a very different experience, and any kind of familiarity that we can give to those children. You know, they may not be able to go into their old second grade classroom if they're going to third grade. But if we can keep as many staff members around so they can see their second grade teacher in the hallway, oh, hi, Mrs. So-and-so, might make them feel more comfortable in the class setting. So we are going to try to help with that transition here. I don't know if
Well-
you want to stop at each slide, or, I lost Mr. Belmont, sorry.
So let's assume that part of maintaining social emotional wellness in school is actually being successful as a student. And, you know, March to June, some kids did well, some kids really struggled. We, as a district, learned a lot. So coming into September, what are we doing what are we doing differently to support academics in terms of kids who are very high achieving, as well as kids who are struggling, and also our special needs population? What are we doing differently this fall as opposed to last spring?
Well, I think, you know, as we described earlier, the whole program has changed. You know, there was a lot of onus on children in the spring to be independent and to navigate the waters. You know, we are getting to a much more structured day. So I think that structured day, like you mentioned, you know, for special education students, I think that structure would benefit. And I think it benefits all students, actually, you know, because I will tell you, and I did hear this from certain folks, that, you know, I had a hard time waking my child up before, and you fill in your favorite time. You know, and I do think that was something that was happening. If you're remote or if you're, you know, in school, you're getting up for first period.
Yeah.
You know, we are taking attendance. You're not sleeping in until whatever time that is. So I think that will definitely help. We are taking a proactive approach, so any child that's been identified to us or on our radar already, we're going to be reaching out to them. Like I said, we don't want to miss any child, so we are then going to go into classrooms and see if we can catch other students as well. You know, one of the unfortunate disadvantages we have in this new world is that, you know, when the kids are sitting in rows and aren't having those little small group instruction kind of conversations, we don't get the same feelers out there with the teachers that we normally would. You know, when kids are more social and we can, you know, be part of their conversations, we get a better sense. We are going to need to be more proactive. It's required so that we can identify those kids that do need that support. I hope I answered your question. I'm sorry if I sidetracked a little bit.
One quick follow-up. Going into fall, are we going back to numeric grades, or are we sticking with pass-fail?
The intention would be going back to numerical grades. I know that the folks that, again, like I said, were sitting on the committee, whether or not they were the adults or the students, I think that that was something that people would welcome. You know, before, like I said, the structure to the days were very different. We were completely, you know, coming into this blindly when we flipped the switch. And, you know, a lot of these kids and families were trying to navigate, and we wanted to give everybody the benefit of the doubt during that time. Now that we're able to offer a much more structured day, we have better technologies in place so that we can do all the live streaming that, you know, would allow us to replicate what we're doing in the classroom. Obviously, it does not mirror, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that it's business as usual, but it will be a much more structured, systematic product, and we should be able to assess much more, you know, accurately what a kid's knowledge is. And, you know, as Mr. Belmont asked before, you know, we may be doing that differently. It may be creative. It may not look exactly the way it did in the past, but we do think we can get a better gauge of a kid's performance.
Just regarding mental health and social emotional well-being, especially with older kids, there's so much pressure on them to begin with. Everything's different. Things are going to be different with kids that are applying to college. I think that we need, and it might not be something that teachers will necessarily see or any staff members, but I think we need to remind people and students that reportit.com is available. If they have friends that, you know, that are, you know, having issues, it might not be readily available to even the parents, but I think that, you know, they need to know that if they see someone struggling and they don't feel that they don't want to say it directly to a staff member, that there's always that option of putting it out there anonymously, just so somebody in the district is aware that a child is struggling.
I might Dr. Burak, I know that you put a letter together recently
year.
about that,
Every
so
year.
that, people will be aware of that as school opens. So that is something like, Dr. Burak just said, it happens every year, and it was actually just recently put together so that, yes, that reminder will be out there.
Quick question regarding the social emotional health. I know that there will be check-ins in the classroom, but for those children who are remote, how will that look? Will it just be from their regular teachers? Will there be mental health workers that are dropping in to discuss and check in with them? I just want to make sure, that they're receiving the same type of support.
Okay, so I'm going to try to split that question into the two levels just because I think it'll be a little bit different there. When you're talking about, let's start at the secondary because those kids are in the same room as the other children. So when we start talking about our mental health professionals pushing into classrooms, again, in the same way the teacher is teaching like this to two different groups, that mental health professional can have conversations with both groups. So they would be part of those same opportunities, discussions, and learn about the resources very similar to their peers in the classroom simultaneously. All right. At the elementary school level, the same way that a teacher would push into a physical classroom, a support staff member would push into a physical classroom, they can push into the remote sessions very similarly, for those children. Also, too, and you'll see this in a few minutes when, after this presentation is done, if we go fully remote, we'll have a whole nother conversation. If you don't mind me, I'll save it to then just so I don't confuse people, but we'll talk about how that'll happen at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So another...
Dr. Belekas, could I
yes.
just, because you
I
just mentioned
apologize,
one
yes.
thing, and I know there was a question that I might as well address it now. So you mentioned about the live streaming and some of the technology improvements. So there was a question that had asked us about the bandwidth requirements that this will require. We have actually tripled our bandwidth requirements since then. So we started out, this district has been running on a half a gig pipe for those of you that are into technology. We just installed a full gig pipe up at North, and then we upped the starting pipe to 750. So we've taken that 500 and now we've gone up to 1.75. So we have made some provisions in terms of the bandwidth. So I just wanted to address that. I thought this was a good time.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. Okay, so the next, like I said, focus group that we had was the programmatic areas. I know that we do have some children who have services that are provided by two teachers. So there will be co-teaching still for special education students in what we call our ICT settings. And some of our E&L students actually receive very similar services. So that's our students who are learning English as a new language. So when the teachers are working together, lessons will be shared by the co-teachers for the live stream. If we are working with them, we are going to make sure that they receive their modifications, whether or not they're on this side of the computer or on that side. So if they're out in the person or if they're on the screen, they will be modified according to their needs. Like I said a little bit earlier, the physical education teachers will be working with our support staff to address students' mental health and social and emotional needs. I think that is a very important partnership, and that can happen, as we mentioned, whether or not the students are remote or in person. One of the other pieces that is very important when we start talking about program and curriculum is the 10-minute passing time. I know I'm repeating myself here, so I'll try to go quickly, but when we take away time from a lesson, obviously in a math or a science class, you may have one or two less examples. We need to make sure that whatever mini lessons we give count. So we're going to focus on the most important concepts that kids need to learn, and that's how our curriculum is going to work, whether or not you're here or if you're in the remote setting. The last piece, again, I know many questions have been asked. The assessments will vary, and we will be taking into account whether or not a student is here or at home, and we'll try to offer similar assessments, regardless of location. All right, I'm going to keep moving unless somebody stops me. I apologize, I'll come back.
Yes, keep going. We'll jump in.
Okay, whoops, I went a little too far on my own screen. All right, so the next area we had was the technology group. I know there's a slide up there now. There will be a second half of this slide because there was a lot of technological considerations here. We did order devices for all of our students. You know, we do know that some of them are not going to be here as we open, so we will be giving priority to those who do not have a suitable device at home that need them. We will also be offering Wi-Fi connections for those who do not have an internet connection at home. We did put out a survey early to gauge what the need here would be. We do have partners at BOCES that are working with us to be able to provide Wi-Fi for those that have that need. We also are going to encourage students in grades 3 to 12 to bring their devices back and forth. What that means is basically what we've been having with our one-to-world model in grades 6 through 12. We would be extending that in grades 3 through 12. At the point where we do have devices for K through 2, we will have them in school for a period of time. We need to teach the children how to use the devices so that if we do go remote, that they can use them, but we're not expecting those to go back and forth. You know, we do think it is important to train them, but once the training has occurred, you know, those devices can stay at home in case we need to go remote. The other pieces here with the instructional technologies, we will be live streaming, as we mentioned earlier, and attendance will be recorded. So that these, you know, if you have a class and you are taking a remote class at home, you're expected to be in that class on time. We will be conducting lots of different professional events for teachers. The ones that are currently underway right now, we started last week working with teachers on our learning management systems. So that technology training has started, and all of the teachers will be taking 2 sessions on the learning management systems this month in preparation for September. We will also be offering further training. We have 2 superintendent's conference days for staff prior to our opening, where we'll also be working on technologies there as well. There is some information for students and parents currently on our website to help them start to familiarize with the learning management systems prior to opening. We are continuing to try to pull together more resources. I know that Mr. McDermott and the instructional technology team are trying to create tutorials, troubleshooting documents that are very specific to our Lynbrook implementation of both LMSs. The learning management systems that we're talking about here, just so everybody is aware, at the K through 3 level, we're working with something called Seesaw. Many of the students who were in the elementary schools last year during the remote period, many teachers were using it, so there is some familiarity there. It is an LMS that is designed for primary students, which means like the elementary students in the lower grades. At the upper elementary grades into the middle school and high school, we are going to be using something called Schoology, as I mentioned earlier, and those type of things will not only help with the instruction, but also trying to keep kids organized. And, you know, there are so many different functions. Basically, everything that happens with an LMS, it becomes the home of the class. So just to give people a little bit of a sense, you know, when you log in as a student and you're in Lynbrook High School, you'll have different courses you're assigned to. You know, so I will click on my 3rd period art class, and I will be, you know, put into all the resources for that course, and so on. So it will definitely help organize students' lives. That is the technology section.
Dr. Blex, is there going to be ongoing support for the teachers in terms of the learning management system? I know you said 2 staff development days. You know, we are going back into a brave new world here, so they're going to be asked to manage quite a bit on top of the new management system. Is there somebody, a point person in each building for the teachers to go to if they're having trouble, you know, can't figure it out, there's a breakdown in something with the technology?
We have a lot of different layers of support. So like I said, there are 2 trainings that are happening now in the learning management system in August. There'll be a 3rd training in technologies in September before we open. You know, there are folks that are, you know, sitting on the other side of the room across from here that are helping with technologies tonight. So we do have a technology team that helps with certain what I'll call hardware type issues, connections, and things like that. We have an instructional technology team that does more of your software type issues. So those folks do work in conjunction with Mr. McDermott, who's our coordinator of our instructional technologies. So they will be available supports on site. We are planning on working with folks through BOCES and through Schoology and Seesaw to work with our staff. We do have people that are, I'll call quote-unquote experts in our teaching staff right now. They actually are the ones that have been working through the Lynbrook Teacher Center to deliver our trainings right now. I have to say thank you to Mary Kirby and her team for all the work they've done in coordinating these trainings. They've been working countless hours trying to make sure that they're preparing other teachers, for the experience here based on their experiences with the systems in Lynbrook. So they know our students, they know our staff, and they're trying to make sure they're better prepared. Those same people, obviously, like I said, are our own teachers, so they are resources within the buildings. We do have within each building, there are library media specialists, there are computer aides, there are building technologists. So there are a lot of technical type people within the buildings, again, that can help out, if people are struggling with any of our technologies.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I just, on one of the emails that's coming in, apparently people can hear me at home, but not everyone can be heard. So when you ask a question, please speak into the microphone very clearly, very loudly, because people at home can't hear. Thank you.
So, Mr. Palek, several times it's coming up now with the Wi-Fi. So one, if a family is concerned about their capabilities with Wi-Fi, who specifically do they contact? Is it the principal or someone in the district? Who would they contact to say, hey, I may need assistance with the internet?
Speak into the microphone.
I think it's usually best to start with the principal, and they can direct the inquiry to the right person. Again, it's hard to give a parent too many points
No, I
of
think that's fine,
contact.
as long as the
So
principal.
I think, right, if they can tell the principal will direct them in the right path.
I think that more often than not, we can allow the principal to be a resource for them. I think it's advantageous. that we know.
Absolutely. I think if we try to give too many points of contact, I know as a parent, I wouldn't be able to keep track of it.
Right,
So
the
I
other
think
way.
that definitely helps to go through the principal as the key person.
Now, some of the questions that are coming up,
Like a COVID
and
email.
correct me if I'm wrong in how I'm articulating or summarizing this. Parents are concerned with remote learning if they're on the remote plan or if the remote and technology goes down and they lose internet or there's a storm and part of the town is down and other parts are not, that they will have an understanding that the school will understand and their teachers will understand, as I assume they will, that, hey, they can appreciate things happen, especially in the remote learning world, and we can assure them that teachers will understand those situations and be able to provide them with assistance with that.
I think, the most key word with everything that we're talking about tonight is flexibility.
Correct.
We all need to roll with the punches here. There's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be technological fails. There'll be technological fails on our computer system. Inevitably, there'll be technological fails on their home systems. We can't predict anything that goes on. We saw last week what happened when the storm came through. LIPA was putting on, networks in different places. We had technological trainings happening last week. We had to reschedule certain people. Why? Because a tree fell on their block and they just happened to be
Right.
one of the unfortunate people without service. So yes.
But we
will
should be comfortable
definitely
in letting
work
our
with them.
community know that our teachers and staff and administrators will understand those issues happen and will work with and be understanding of the families that are going through that.
And I think the big thing with that, Mr. Belmont, is just making sure that they communicate with us.
Correct.
If you have an issue, don't just say 3 weeks later, I couldn't get on because my Wi-Fi didn't work that day. Let us know.
Communicate it.
Yes.
And the other issue that keeps coming up intertwined with that is the one we addressed earlier, but I just want to make sure we clarify it. And Dr. Barrick, we had indicated there's really two types of absences. There's a student who has an unexcused absence and a student who has a excused absence. So if you're on quarantine, you're excused absent. But if a child is home for maybe because they decided they wanted to self-quarantine or they just called in sick that day, they'll still be able to get their schoolwork. They can still call the school and say, let Mrs. Smith know little Johnny's not in school today. Can I get the homework at the end of the day? That's a separate issue from how that student's being labeled as excused or unexcused.
If you're talking about an elementary
Yes,
student,
elementary, I'm
so
sorry.
an elementary student, if you're sick for a legitimate reason or for a couple of days, to say you have conjunctivitis, and just as you normally would work with the teacher and say, can you just please send homework and then we'll do the work at home, that will still take place.
Correct.
That has not changed.
Right. And for those families that might be on the remote plan, again, if there's a technological issue, they need to communicate that with their principal and get that addressed. Whatever supplemental work, their teachers and their principals will work with those families to address that issue.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the.
Please speak into the microphone.
I am. Hello? I have a question regarding the learning management system for parents and students, if they wanted to start looking at it now. I'm on the website. It says that there's, the district will post tutorials. Do we have any idea when those are going to be up?
Yeah, they're in the process of being created. I don't have an exact date. I do know that I spoke to Mr. McDermott earlier this week, and they are still currently working on those. So I know that one of the issues, unfortunately, that needs to be addressed is that certain third-party softwares that are going to be housed within the learning management system. So, we have this basic hub, which is called the learning management system. What the hub is going to do, it's going to interface with Microsoft Office 365, which has been a product that we've been using for many years. Anybody that's had a secondary student in our system is probably familiar with the words, at least OneNote. If you haven't looked at your kids' things, they've probably been talking about that. That is a Microsoft product. We are working on interfacing those type of things with the learning management system. We are trying to get some of our communication tools again embedded into the management system. So I know that one of the tools that we've had much use of has been WebEx. So WebEx is now being added in there. So after all those third parties get fully attached, then we can start producing videos that would make more sense to, share with the general public.
And if a parent or a student has questions after looking at the tutorials, who's the point of contact for them?
With the learning management system, again, it couldn't hurt to start conversations as to have one point of contact would be the principal, but ultimately the questions would be filtered to Mr. McDermott.
And so the overall, just because, as Mrs. Marcus was asking, give a better perspective on that, will the learning management system funnel down to the elementary school?
The learning management systems, I want to make sure I say it in the plural. Seesaw will be in the lowest elementary, so the primary grades K through 3, and the secondary system into the the upper elementary, so grades 4 through 12 will be Schoology.
And so, what is the advantage of what will the parents gain from the LMS, the learning management? What is that going to do for parents now that they weren't able to do in previous years?
Okay, so there's going to be two sides of it. The one thing, like I had mentioned, from a parent's point of view, it's going to keep their inbox cleaner. They're not going to be bombarded with all of their kids' work. The kids' work will be passed through the LMS. The parents can go into the LMS through a parent account and see what their kids are doing, so they're not cut out of the communication process, but it keeps it from having to be filtered through them. For anybody, like I said before, that was under 13, they were kind of quarterbacking at home, all of the assignments. So the assignment that came from the art teacher, the music teacher, the science teacher, the classroom teacher, and they were getting all these emails. So that was one of the, complaints that we heard during the spring, that this is a lot of juggling to do, and we understood that and wanted to come up with a better solution. This LMS will take care of that problem that parents were seeing. It also, too, like I said, adds organization to everything going on. So all of the programs that we're talking about, parents had to juggle passwords. There are many conversations that happened between our staff members and parents saying, what was the username for this again? I can't remember my password, all those type of things. We had the LMS. There's something that we're working on right now that's a single sign-on. There's a program called ClassLink that'll help us so that when the students sign on to the LMS, they can access these other programs without having to have a username and password for everything. So there's all these extra bonuses that come from having a centralized hub, if I can use those terms.
Is there any connection between the LMS and Power School? They're two totally separate
I'm
programs.
glad you asked that one, actually. So the secondary system, Schoology, is a
affiliate company of Power School. They have the same parent company. So anything that happens in the one automatically migrates over to the other. So that nice thing about it is if you take an assignment or a test or something through the Schoology system, it's going straight into the gradebook, which is a nice feature for everybody involved because, you know, the teacher then doesn't have to transfer things. It's automatically input, and the students and parents can get that information back much faster because of that. So yes, it is a very great integration with that product. You know, Seesaw, it doesn't happen as seamlessly because, again, that's a very bare bones product, but we wanted something that was simple enough that, you know, after a few weeks of doing this at home, that you can give your elementary student independence. We felt like, you know, if you did something like a Schoology with a first grader at this point, you'd be sitting with them every day, all year long. That's not our intention. We want to be able to give you some flexibility at home so that, yes, you may be sitting with your first grader for a few weeks, but there's going to be a point, hopefully, that they say, you know, I've got this. And they can do some of these things on their own. So that was something that we were trying to, you know, foster.
Thank you.
If currently is the extra help schedule set up, or that's still something you're working on the teachers with?
That is something we still have to work out with the teachers. We do know that, you know, we think that is important, that we provide extra help. We just don't have the logistics worked out at this time.
Appreciate that. If for some reason, for a variety of reasons, we have to go remote at all levels, is that something our staff is prepared for, if administration is prepared for?
If we do have to go remote, we will be talking about that. Like I said, this is, I guess, part one of what I'll be sharing tonight. Later on, toward the end, that I was hoping to put a little temporal distance, so that's why we separated this. You know, when Dr. Barrick was putting together the presentation, she put this part as the current plan. If we need to flip a switch at the very end, I'm going to be coming back and talking about what the full remote plan looks like. At that point, you'll see the background on the slides change slightly, so we can differentiate. But yes, we will be talking about what we would pivot to if you know, we were fully closed.
Thank you. Dr. Berg, in the next few slides, are we talking about before and after school programs?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. And then, and the other thing, because the question keeps coming up also, as far as the question about whether or not we're ever going to go back, because we keep talking about if we have to go remote, which is a much more realistic option than us coming back to school fully. So that's been asked a couple of times. There are no current plans, but that decision rests with the governor. So any idea of having a full day with no remote is solely in the hands of the governor, has nothing to do with the school district.
Even though we don't have any choice on that, it is in our plans. It is an option if you know, the world does change. We did put that included in the plans we submitted to the state, but yes, that would be an option outside of our control.
Thank you.
Okay. The next slide here. We had a focus group that focused on the storage of belongings. We talked about not sharing objects. If we did have to share something, we would wipe down the equipment or books between users. So there may be, you know, a dirty bin type of situation where, you know, once it goes in the dirty bin, we cannot take it out of the dirty bin for X number of days, or it will be wiped down. You know, we do know that a lot of times when kids are playing sports, they share a ball and so on. You know, we would limit the amount of children that would be touching that ball, and it would be wiped down before the next small group would be using something like that. You know, we are going to really try to limit the amount of things that are shared. We are encouraging students to bring in things that are easily cleaned. One of the recommendations that came from the Storage of Belongings group was buying things like vinyl or plastic backpacks as opposed to cloth ones that are easily wiped down and cleaned when they come home. Same kind of things with pencil cases. You know, we do know there's cloth pencil cases. There's also those hard plastic boxes. So, you know, anything that's easier to clean is probably ideal given this school year. We will be talking to folks about students carrying around some basic supplies for their personal use. You know, things that we've had kids share in the past. You know, they might go in the art room and share a paintbrush. We don't necessarily want the kids sharing a paintbrush, so there will be some supplies that we may be looking for differently right now, and those will be coming, you know, through contacts with teachers and buildings about, you know, things that we want children to bring in for their personal use. I know that, you know, sometimes you'd have on your supply list, bring a box of tissues for the class. You know, we're not going to have as many communal things, so kids may want to bring those small little packages of tissues and keep them in their book bag or on their person in some way, shape, or form. There are some activities that we want to still be able to do with children that, again, involved communal materials in the past. So I'm going to give an example here. We had bought elementary science laboratory kits from BOCES. Those kits would travel, start in, let's say, my classroom today and go into Maureen's classroom tomorrow to conduct the science lab. And the kids would do that with their partners and so on. We can't do that anymore. You know, we're not going to be able to clean those materials. So our partners at BOCES worked with us, and we will be getting individualized kits that the single student use type of things, so that the kids can still conduct laboratory experiments and things like that, and they would receive their own materials. I know that, you know, in certain buildings that folks are working on personalized baggies for kids. So if you have a kindergarten student, you will be receiving a little individualized foundations board, which is kind of like a white board that kids can use when they're learning, you know, reading and writing type of skills. There will be counters available, you know, things like that for math and so on. So we are trying to make sure that kids aren't sharing, you know, communal materials. And as Mr. Seda had mentioned earlier, you know, we're not planning on using lockers in the secondary buildings.
Okay, we're moving on now to the next subcommittee. That was Transportation, and Dr. Berman was the chair of the Transportation Subcommittee. She'll go over those expectations.
Thank you. So the school bus is truly an extension of the classroom and of the school buildings. So many of the recommendations that you're going to hear today concerning transportation are based on the same recommendations that are designed for the school buildings. So things that address distancing, social distancing, and cleaning protocols, those will all be applied to the schools, will be applied to the school buses. So the Transportation Committee actually was created with a lot of collaborative efforts of administrators, parents, and also the safety representative from our current bus company. And we reviewed all of the CDC guidelines, the state guidance, and identified the safety actions that are necessary to provide transportation safely for all of our children. So one of the expectations that we focused on and we wanted to address today addresses the boarding and disembarking protocols that are necessary for our students. So what is that going to look like? Well, first of all, in keeping with the health and safety protocols for the safety plans, the children will be pre-screened before coming to school. So they will be boarding the bus not with documents in their hand. Our children will not be showing anything to the bus driver, but the expectation is that the families will be completing the screening prior to children getting to the bus. Their temperature obviously is not to be more than 100 degrees. If they're well enough to attend school, then they're well enough to be able to ride the bus. Children will be expected to wear a face mask as long as they are physically possible, it's physically possible and that they're able to. And the expectation is that the children will be wearing these face masks actually at the bus stop, and that they will be socially distancing at the bus stop. And we're hopeful that the parents or the adults that will be at the bus stop with the children will also be wearing masks as well to be able to be those role models, as we've heard throughout this evening's presentation. The children will be boarding the bus, socially distanced, and when the first set of children are getting onto the bus, we will board them so that they get to the back of the bus first, and they will be sitting in the rows starting from the back and then moving towards the front. When it comes time to disembark from the bus, the children will be disembarking from the front rows and then continuing to the back, so that we're trying to minimize the amount of passing time that the children have utilizing the small aisles that are on the buses. Children will also be assigned seats, so I will explain how they're going to be sitting into the seats and what their seat assignments are going to be. And again, we're looking for them to follow the social distancing protocols. The children also will be sitting when they do take their seats on the bus. We are looking for them to sit by the window to help elaborate on that space between where the children will sit. So let's look at the seating then. The buses are going to operate at a reduced capacity. So what is that going to look like? We are going to have one student sitting in each seat. The only exception will be if there are siblings, we will look to have siblings sit together on the bus. The seats are going to be marked, similar to like being on an airplane where the seats will be numbered, so that the children will know their seat assignment and where they will, which seat number they should be looking for on the bus. Seating charts are going to be developed, and when we send home the letters to the families to let families know when their bus pickup is going to be, we'll also be indicating where your child will be sitting on the bus. We also have been focusing on what the routing procedures are going to look like. So a number of the students that are going to be on the buses, we need to modify some of those routes in order to allow for social distancing to take place on this for the seating arrangements for the buses. So additional routes could include either adding buses or conducting some double runs with split times. What we're looking at are the start times and end times of the day to be able to coordinate so that children are arriving to school on time and that they're leaving at the end of the day on time. When we looked at the bus staff, the bus company is going to follow the same guidelines that our staff is following and our students are following with self-screening. So the bus company has their version of this asking questions of their staff prior to them arriving at work. The school bus drivers and the monitors will be seen wearing face coverings. They will also have the option to wear face shields, and gloves will also be provided to them as well if they choose to wear those. The staff that rides the bus and that drives the bus, they're going to be trained and be provided with additional refresher classes so that we know that they are aware of how they're to use the PPE equipment, and that will also help understand the recognition of what to look for with potential symptoms for COVID-19. The bus drivers are also going to maintain a record of daily attendance. So as the students board the bus, they are going to be marking the children off on a chart that they will have. This will assist us in the event that there is any contact tracing that does need to be done. We'll be able to provide a listing of the children that were on the bus to the Department of Health if they were to need that information. And then the last thing that we focused on had to do with the bus cleaning. So after each bus run, any of the frequently high-touched areas, for example, like the railing that the children will hold as they get onto the bus as they board by the steps, or the tops of the seats and sides of the seats that the children sometimes use to hold as they navigate up and down the aisles, those areas will be cleaned between the bus routes in order to just quickly wipe those down. However, the buses will be completely disinfected at the end of their routes. So this means the last time that the bus actually gets to the garage or to the yard, that's when they will have a deep clean. What will that look like? One of the things that they're going to be using will be the foggers, similar to the ones that we're using here in school, so that the surface areas will be completely and adequately addressed by using the fog machines. The bus company is also going to complete a checklist each time the buses are cleaned so that they will be able to maintain a record that everything that they do need to do is being completed. One of the additional things that we are doing is next week we are going to be sending out parental communication just to the families who will be receiving and have qualified for transportation. We had earlier, prior to now, we have sent out a questionnaire to find out who would be considering utilizing transportation. The surveys were done anonymously, and the results were displayed on the district website. However, we're now at the point that we want to be able to directly contact the families that will be using transportation and to be able to identify if they are going to be using transportation or not, so we can finalize and finally tweak the routes that we have set up. Because we have the preliminary routes set up, but we want to make sure that we are providing for all of the children that will be coming to school. In addition to that, when we do send home the letters through the mail to be able to finally identify the times for pickups, at that point we will be sending home a letter that the committee helped put together, which identifies all of the protocols that are necessary for the parents and children to recognize what it means to ride the bus and what these protocols will be for boarding the bus, getting off of the bus, and some of that information is already present on the district webpage, but this will be in a particular letter format so that it is easily accessible when you do receive your information concerning transportation for this year.
Thank you.
A quick question. The cost, are there additional costs because we're going to be doing different runs and only one kid to a seat?
So there will be some additional costs to the transportation for this year. For example, with regards to the kindergarten center, we traditionally, for the past couple of years, I should say, we have had 6 buses that we've utilized. In order to accommodate this type of routing, we would be looking to set up 8 buses in order to accommodate all of the children. One of the things that did go into that thought process, if we continued with 6 buses first thing in the morning and had some split routing done, allowing to have the children come in anytime between the 8:20 and 9 a.m., that would work. However, when we look at the afternoon runs, we definitely would need the 8 buses because all of the children are being dismissed at 2:30. And for our 4 and 5-year-olds that are attending school, especially in September, to be able to recognize the different buses that they would have to be on, because there would be a lot of confusion for these young children. So keeping the continuity for these children, having the same bus seats, having the same bus drivers and matrons with them, the 8 buses for each would be designed for them.
And the PPE that the bus drivers will be using, that's, I'm assuming the cost will be absorbed by the bus company and not us.
Correct. So the bus company will be taking care of that. However, we will be providing a box of masks to each of the drivers for the bus, so that if there are any children that do come to the bus and they've forgotten their masks, we'll be able to provide them the masks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, and then the last subcommittee, once again, the chairperson was our new AD, Mr. Martellotti, who could not be here tonight, so I'm just going to share some of the expectations. I believe that in prior meetings, I have already shared some of this information, so I will just reiterate it. At this point, the fall high school sports has been pushed back to September 21st, but as you know, each day we hear something else, and another college league has canceled or postponed. So once again, we await further information. There is a website available so that everyone can check for themselves. At this point, there's no decision on middle school sports. When sports will resume, please know that the attendance will look a little different. We will need to maintain social distancing for the spectators, so just be aware of that. At this point, there's no live instruction or workouts that are permitted between the student athletes and the district coaches. I have previously announced that adult education has been postponed until the spring semester. Mr. Belmont, you were starting to ask before about clubs. So the clubs that we are going to permit, and I've asked the principals to go through of which clubs would be clubs that we would be able to run, but those would be held virtually. At this point, there are no field trips. I know one of the questions that came in will be, will field trips ever be resumed? We hope that field trips will be resumed. I just don't foresee it in the near future. So once again, as the school year progresses, we'll have more information. And when it comes to driver's education, we just follow the New York State driver's education guidelines for that. The next one, Right at School. I have previously announced this also. Right at School after school program will operate under the Department of Health guidelines. The one difference is we are looking at opening a kindergarten center group so that those students do not go on a bus and then commingle with the other buildings, so they'll stay at the kindergarten center. And we realize that if a parent has 2 children or 3 children and you may have to go to another elementary school in the kindergarten center, we know obviously that there'll be different times that they'll be arriving at those 2 locations. We are also looking at an elementary early drop-off program through Right at School to see if we could make that available to parents who may need an early drop-off, because as you are hearing through the schedule, there's no early morning, so there's given that one 30-minute time slot to arrive to school, we cannot provide early morning supervision. So we're looking at least for the elementary school to see if Right at School could offer something, and then we'll let you know. The intramural programs before school, they've been postponed until November, at which point we will revisit. And as I just said, the early morning drop-off at the middle school has also been postponed until further notice.
So Dr. Rick, just to expand on that and just take our time and just be clear, and let's start at all 3 levels first. Let's actually go to all 4. Right now, is there any option for an early drop-off at the kindergarten center?
No.
After school at the kindergarten center?
Yes.
Okay. Any option for an early drop-off at elementary schools?
No.
Anything after school?
Right at school.
At the middle school level, early drop-off available?
No.
Anything after school at the middle school level?
No.
And high school, I don't believe is relevant to those issues?
No.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Barry.
Okay, so now we spent a lot of time on the instructional plan, our green, gold, and blue models for what we will anticipate. So many of the questions have come in, what happens when we have to transition then to full remote? And will we be ready to make that switch the moment that the governor tells us schools are closed and we're going to full remote? That's why the next few slides have a different colored background, and we wanted to create this distance, wanted to make sure that people understand the difference between what we have previously presented for the September reopening and what we're about to present now for if and when the time comes the governor says we have to shut down. Much of this has already been presented to the community back in the spring, but we just want to reiterate this now because the questions are coming up again. Going to turn it back over to Dr. Balekis to review the full remote plan again.
Okay, so again, as Dr. Burak just said, this is if we do have to pivot, at some point during the year to fully remote, meaning that either one of our individual schools were closed for a reason or if the district as a whole was closed. So at the elementary level, what this would entail, we would have a mixed approach that would have both live instruction and some asynchronous learning opportunities. At the secondary level, we would see live daily instruction, and to space things out a little bit, students would be taking either their even or their odd classes every day. As we go through the slides, I'll try to explain a little bit more and give you a few examples of what that means. So let's start with the elementary full remote first. So during the day, it would be very structured, similar to what we were talking about before. But the extra piece that we're seeing when it's fully remote is that there would be asynchronous learning opportunities, meaning opportunities that students wouldn't have to do at a specific time, that they could work on those activities throughout the day. So the day would begin, again, at 8:35 a.m., so students would have to wake up for a specific period. They can't sleep in. That would have all the morning announcements. The principals would be kicking off the day, and then they would go into a live session with their classroom teacher. During that 20-minute period, the teacher would be setting up the day for the individual students. They'll be told when and where they should report remotely for each of their classes. So what you're going to see is there will be live daily instruction for their classroom teacher in both ELA and math. They may have hour blocks kind of on their schedule, which we'll see in a moment, for those subjects, but not all the students would necessarily be there for the full hour. They may try to rotate to smaller groups depending on the nature of that lesson, so that they may tell Mr. Yaker in that class to be there for the first 20 minutes. Mr. Pileski to be there for the next 20, Mr. Paskov to be there for the last 20 with his group, so that we could give smaller learning activities. If there's something that's more conducive to a whole class lesson, that may be a half hour or an hour whole class lesson. We might split the classes in half, but we're trying to give folks the, instructional flexibility to make the groups make sense for that. Also, from the classroom teacher, the social studies, the SEL/health lessons, those will also occur from the classroom teacher live once per cycle. There will hopefully be teaching assistant support in these rooms to try to help facilitate some of these groupings. The live classes will still occur for these special areas, very similar to what we talked about before, that the special areas will have specific times within the cycle that they're meeting with these remote sessions, as well as our support services. So if we are fully remote, students that are in special education, or if they're receiving AIS services or ENL services, those will also be booked in the fully remote day. So we'll talk about what that looks like in a moment. We will be scheduling teacher check-ins, and this is back to something that Mrs. Danino had asked earlier about how we're going to try to look at people's social, emotional needs. The classroom teachers on a rotating basis will be calling 2 people in their assigned section per day. So that by the time, you get 2.5 weeks in, every 2.5 weeks, your family will get a phone call to talk to you and your student to see how things are going and what we can do to better support you. So that is something that, we are thinking is very important to make that personal connection. And as we mentioned before, we don't have the details yet, but we will be looking at scheduling extra help opportunities as well. In addition to the live lessons daily, we would be working on similar amounts of asynchronous assignments, meaning assignments that kids would work on independently in the ELA, the math, the social studies, and the SEL health. The following slide after this, I'm going to just say quickly here, we're going to be talking about a sample elementary schedule. It's not going to be lockstep. This is not an actual schedule. It's just trying to show the concept that we would see the teacher times, like I said, that there would be classroom teacher time blocked out for an hour. We are going to ask within that hour that every teacher, even if you're going to do small groups, sees every student in the class for at least 20 minutes of that hour. So how exactly it's broken out, that would be specific to the day and set up during the morning meetings. And what we're going to see here, the specific times for these lessons, those aren't actual times. Every student would need a different set of times, because obviously I can't have every 3rd grade student with the science teacher during a specific period. So this again is for illustrative purposes. I don't want people to think like if you're fully remote, this is your kid's actual schedule. So that being said, I'm going to project now what the schedule would look like. So if we look at the colors on the screen here, the bright gold in the beginning, that would be for everyone in the building. The principal would be making announcements. We were talking about trying to have different guests appear and do the pledge. There is something to be said for getting the kids excited in the morning and, oh, that's Mrs. So-and-so or whoever it may be giving the pledge that day. So it gives them something to look forward to during the announcements. After the announcements, everybody again would be in that darker, blue color. They would be going into their homerooms to set up the day. At different points throughout the day, and this is why I'm saying that I don't want people to become married to the fact that they're going to see their classroom teacher right away. Some groups may go to the special during that first period. It really depends on how that child's class is scheduled. But there will be times where you'll have an hour block of math with classroom teachers, an hour block of English. One day maybe it'll be half that block will be English, half will be social studies. So there's going to be flexibility, but it would look something like this. That grayish blue color of art class, there are specials that students see throughout the week. Sometimes they see the specials like a science twice in the cycle. There are other classes they see once in the cycle, but those specials would happen somewhere. We have to really look at this system as a modular system. It may not be those exact hours, but it would have that kind of feel to it. One of the things that we're going to iron out, because like we said before, we're going to try to keep the remote kids very similar to the classroom kids, because they may be getting a live stream of the same special. Our remote schedules will be built around our classroom schedules for the kids that are at home. So that'll be a function, of scheduling, and those schedules would pretty much be the same as if we were fully remote. One of the other things that was just put in here for illustrative purposes, let's say period 4, a student doesn't have a specific class assigned, they could work on one of their assignments, let's say like their math assignment that's independent. They might be going on a Eureka Math and doing a math activity that was assigned on the computer, or they might be working on a digital worksheet that was passed out to them, or some other thing like that. There will be times that we're going to obviously give students breaks to eat their lunch. The periods with the teacher, they wouldn't have that daily, but that 15-minute consultation would come in on a rotating basis. For the sake of illustrative purposes, this sample student was put into reading intervention. So there will be times, that kids may have multiple services on the same day, depending. We do have a plethora of services that students receive, both general education, special education, students, as well as E&L students, that they would have service opportunities in this schedule. There will be, like I said before, other opportunities for asynchronous work. So kids may be doing independent reading, writing, and so on. And again, those are just more placeholders just to show what this could possibly look like. All right, I'm going to move on to the secondary plan here. The secondary plan is actually a little bit easier to understand because it looks very similar to what we are doing already. The kids would have a very structured day that's based on the schedules that we have in school. The difference is that kids take a 10-period day right now. In the high school, you would have 5 periods of instruction, not 10 in these circumstances. So the structured day would start at 8:55 a.m. with the morning announcements, and the first class would be at 9 o'clock, and we would be doing things every hour. So again, we will schedule extra help opportunities. The asynchronous learning here is extremely important, because if we are only having live instruction in each course, each period, every other day, we have Regents exams, we have AP exams, and things like that. So we need to make sure that we maximize the time in our classrooms to teach that 180-day curriculum with only 90 days live. So the independent assignments here, we're going to have a lot of what I'll call flipped lesson components, which will prepare a student when they hit the live lesson to have some kind of background knowledge. So they might be doing some reading that'll prepare them for class, maybe watching a video, doing something that would get them ready, whether or not that video is produced by their teacher or it's a website or something that will get the students moving so that when they do reach that live time that we can maximize what it's used for. We will also have to do some type of assessing, to check for students' understanding. It may be something as simple as an exit ticket type of thing, which would be a question or two to see if students understood the lesson. But given the fact that, again, we're not seeing them as often, we're going to have to build those things around and between class periods. So what would that look like? What we're seeing on the screen right now would be a typical schedule for a sophomore, actually, in Lynbrook High School. Why I like the sophomore schedules is because it does have a couple of nuances in there that you don't always see with other grade levels. So if you look at the course schedules, I'm going to stick with day 1 first. The periods that you could possibly see on this kid's schedule would be period 1 on day 1 at 9 a.m., period 3 at 10, period 5 at 11, period 7 at 1, and period 9 at 2. We see that the student doesn't have all of those periods because if they were in person here, they may not be at all of those periods. So it's not that we're saying that these students are going to be on the computer all day long. They will have time to complete those assignments in between classes, because I think that is important that they are best prepared to maximize that live instruction. On the day 2, what you see here, those would be period 2 at 9 a.m., period 4 at 10, period 6 at 11, period 8 at 1, and period 10 at 2. And that's how this schedule is built. The trickiness in the schedule here is that there is an every other day course with the PE and the chemistry, and because it's every other day, in this model, it would be every 4th day, so it would be flipping over. So again, some of these alternate type things, get a little bit tricky, and the LMS, again, as Mr. Pulaski mentioned before, is going to be very critical to make sure that kids are in the right courses at the right times.
Thank you, Dr. Belekas. Once again, that's a review of what we've already presented in the spring for the remote learning plan. That was actually also the last request of the governor to make sure that we did a full explanation of what our full remote plan. So now his latest request last Friday were the informational meetings, the tracing and testing protocols, and the full remote explanation have now been completed by us.
I have a question. Is, for the high school level,
Please
is
speak
there,
louder. Please speak into the
Talk to
microphone.
Okay, I'll repeat it after, okay?
for the high school, is there an educational reason for doing the half the time synchronous, half the time asynchronous versus just continuing with everybody being remote and having of periods 1 through 10 with 10 minutes in between?
You know, what we had tried to build here, and if you look at it just the way the hours are, it gives the students an opportunity between classes. So a 10 to 10:40 would give you the 20 minutes in between. You know, we were trying to give the kids different learning opportunities, basically. I'm not going to say one way is better than the other, but that was how the schedule was built, so that we have those two different modalities. Because we did hear that it was hard, you know, for some people to work in one direction or the other, so we were trying to balance, you know, the learning opportunities depending on the type of learner we're talking about.
Dr. Blake, some of the questions, I want to just make sure the information is accurate. So at the elementary school level, if you are quarantined and you are home, you're getting the work the same way you would have last year if you had chicken pox.
Correct.
If we flip a switch and the entire district goes remote, you then will have access to remote teaching because those same teachers that were teaching in-school teaching would now be doing remote to those students.
Correct.
Thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit? You had mentioned earlier some relationship between the role the phys ed teachers will have with mental health.
The physical education teachers will be working on SEL and those type of mental health lessons. Many of our staff members already do that. You know, we have health courses that address these needs as is. You know, that's what we've typically done for years. You know, obviously this is going to be a major concern throughout the district. You know, trying to make sure that we're helping kids with their emotional regulation, dealing with their feelings, and all those type of activities which, you know, the physical education teachers are trained to, you know, deliver to students. So I think that is important that we give them that support, you know, not only from our support staff, but also to giving them the knowledge and the words and so on to be able to express those type of things more effectively.
Thank you. And those classes that are being live streamed, none of those are recorded, correct?
At the moment, that is correct. You know, again, everything is
Right, but just
subject
as of
to
right now,
change.
they're not recorded. I appreciate that. And Dr. Bjork, if someone's out because of a positive COVID test, they need a doctor's note to return?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Bjork. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I just have another question.
Yes, Ms. Brown.
My microphone's not working. When it is not a full remote scenario, and you're dealing with some kids in the high school having the blue model and some kids having the green model, the kids that have the green model are following the same exact schedule as the kids that have the blue model, where they just have 10 minutes in between each period?
Correct. That is, it's the same schedule because they're in the same classes.
So I guess going back to my previous question, why wouldn't the full remote plan be that same thing just for everybody in high school?
You know, all I can say is that's not how it was designed at the time. You know, it was designed that way, like I said, to try to balance modalities.
Okay.
Anything else on the board? Dr. Reagan, move superintendent's report.
Oh, sure. We do have other business. We do have some good news. It was already on the website, but Lynbrook High School was once again designated a Scholar Athlete School of Excellence. That means at least 75% of our teams had a team average of 90 or greater. So that's good. We received that same award last year, so it's nice that the excellence continues. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lynch for the capital projects and bond update.
Thank you, Dr. Burek. So with the capital projects and the bond update, just have to look outside. You can see that the project is progressing well. There is a temporary sidewalk bridge out there, and most of the foundation is poured at this point, so I'd say we're improving along. Mr. Sada, since you're actually here, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, we have just about all the foundations poured. We already started putting up block on the gym storage area. The roof is almost ready to go on over there. We're in the process of running all the electrical conduit, running all the underground plumbing, all the roof plumbing. We're currently now trying to focus in on getting the courtyard area opened up. This way we're ready to go for September. There's still a lot of electrical work that needs to go in over there. We still have to do some major sewer work along the whole front of the building, so we're going to unfortunately have to put down some concrete to open up some school, and then remove some concrete a little later on in order to get the sewers in. But it's progressing pretty well right now. Do you want me to continue with other capital projects, or, or just bond?
If you could just speak, while I have you on a microphone, this would be good. So I do want to give folks that live in the Marion Street area a little heads up about a crane that might be coming down their block shortly.
Yeah, we were scheduled to shut down the electric over at Marion Street and remove the transformer vaults that are on the front lawn. Due to the hurricane, PSE&G delayed that opening. So now we're going to try to attempt to do it on the 17th, but I haven't gotten PSE&G confirmation on that yet. But if it does happen on the 17th, we're going to shut down the power. We're going to dig up the transformer vaults. We're going to remove them. And in order to get a new transformer vault in there, we're going to have to crane them up and over the power lines and then set them onto the front lawn again over at Marion Street, which will require a large crane, closing of the road for a little while. Marion Street will be down on power for approximately 4 days before we can relight it up and go through all the systems and make sure everything is a go.
And that is Marion Street, the school, not Marion Street, the street. I saw a bunch
Sorry,
of...
I should have
your
clarified
face. Yes,
that.
that's after we have storms.
And the
like.
crane will be on Waverly.
Yes. And then the Waverly Park elevator is
Waverly
moving along
Park
nicely?
elevator is going up nicely. We finished the block on the inside. We are probably 60% done with the brick on the outside of the building. The steel is hung for the second floor inside. We're almost ready to pour concrete floors in the first floor and the second floor. We still have to put in windows and doors. But we're moving along nicely there, too.
And if you could just finish up with West End HVAC?
Sure. West End and Marion Street, the HVA systems are just about done. All the ductwork, the ceilings are almost restored. We ran into a little bit of a delay over at Marion Street, but hopefully the ceilings will be buttoned up, I'll say, by the end of next week, and then we'll get our companies in to redo the gymnasium floors, and we should be okay for opening. They're not going to be up and running by September, but hopefully we'll get them up and running not too long after that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sada. I have a quick question. Is it imminent to redo the gym floors in the buildings now if we're using them not for phys ed purposes? Is that something we could hold off on?
I already redid a few of them.
Oh.
There's a couple left to do. Purchase orders are already written. We'll maintain them as best as we can.
And that's it.
So Dr. Blatt, another question for you. So let's say one of our buildings has an exposure and needs to be shut down for 2 days for cleaning. What happens with instruction then? Is it fully remote? Is it hybrid? What would happen?
I think, again, it's different at each level, but it would be, if you can't go hybrid if you can't come here. So it would be fully remote. If you're in a secondary building, we've already had half the class, maybe more than half the class, that it's on the live stream already. So we can go and have the whole class live stream. So it's not much of a transition there in the sense that, that's been the experience already for the children at some point in time. Everybody in that class has experienced it. So that should be relatively seamless. At the elementary school level, it's going to be a little bit different. Those students, their teacher, hasn't been the remote teacher. There's been a remote teacher. So those teachers are going to need some time to get things up and running. what I would anticipate, it would be that next day, the class would be instructed to come into their morning meeting. My guess is it may take the teacher a little time to get everything going, so that first day, again, that word flexibility. People are going to need to figure out what to do on day one and hopefully have it better set up for day two. And, I think, again, it's going to depend on the age of the kids. I hate to say that, but, it's going to be harder for a group of kindergartners to flip a switch possibly than it would be for a group of fifth graders.
Right, but as we saw, we should be smoother than we were in the spring, but there's still the
Absolutely.
possibility of our abilities to adapt to the situations, which are unknown in some circumstances to what the state or the county may decide for us, but our plan is to continue to educate the kids the best way we can.
Yes, and I think, we'll be able to do it much faster. We do have the, let's go back to the words that we just used a moment ago by the facilities folks. We have the foundation. We know how to make the switch. It'll just take some time to, move everybody and migrate.
Perfect, I appreciate it. Anything else, Dr. Bier?
No, just to clarify, a question came in, the learning management system for the 4 through 12 is Schoology. Once again, I cannot emphasize this enough. There is a wealth of information on the district reopening webpage. Every question that we've received tonight, I would have to say 90% of those questions can be answered by looking at that webpage. The protocols in the different areas, the learning management system information, the videos that are there, the training, the masks that are required, all of that information is on there. So I ask everyone to please use that. It was designed to help you, to prepare you so that you know what the expectations are for the upcoming school year. So I just encourage everyone to please take some time to review that reopening webpage.
And to expand on that, you will also have the opportunity to hear from the principals of each of your buildings for those very specific questions you may have about how those buildings operate. So the combination of the website, the information tonight, which is recorded and on the website for review, as well as the meetings with your principals for what could be known at this time is. At this time.
Right, and then don't forget the last informational meeting. Any question, if we have not answered the question already in any of our presentations, those would be the questions we will entertain at next Wednesday's live streamed informational meeting. Once again, just to reiterate that, any questions that have already not been answered, you can email those questions to reopening@lynbrookschools.org. No later than next Tuesday, the end of the day. Thank you.
And what time is that stream on Wednesday?
10 o'clock a.m.
I have a question regarding the building level meetings. Were each family member, they've already been notified about those meetings? How were they notified?
The principals should have notified their buildings, yes.
And do we know, can you list now, like, when those meetings are in case people didn't receive the notification?
I do not have all of the times right
Okay.
in front of me. I
Can it
do
go on?
know that Mr. Fallon's is tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I know kindergarten is tomorrow evening at 6. I believe West End and Waverly are 7 o'clock tomorrow, and I believe Marion Street is 9 o'clock on Friday morning.
And the high school, I believe, is at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning.
And the high school is 11 tomorrow, and South? Do you know? 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock tomorrow? 5 o'clock tomorrow, South.
Are there links on the website for each of these meetings? Does it work that way?
It was done from the building too, so no, if I didn't know them, I didn't put them on the website.
Okay.
Just,
But if they're going to be recorded, the links will be on the website?
I have to speak to the principals.
just, again, if parents fail to make a decision, I know this happened in New York City, where parents failed to make a decision, and they were automatically put into the in-person schooling. Do we have a default if parents don't make a decision by the 14th?
Yes, earlier we said that we would consider them all in, that they would be the in-person model. Well, it's an elementary school gold model, and it's hybrid for 6 through 12.
I don't know if there's maybe typically families that don't answer, or because of a language barrier are less inclined to possibly look. I mean, is there any way to reach out to
Yes.
some?
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that there's nothing else from the board, at this time, we'll move to public comment. The way we'll do this, just to maintain social distancing, there's few people. I'll actually run in order from first. I'll just go from each row. If someone has a question, let me know when I point. If you would, at the time in which you're identified to come to the mic, please identify yourself, whether you live in or out of district, and then ask your question. Would you like to address the board? Sir?
And there's a black line.
Oh,
where
yes,
you-
there's a black line before the microphone. Please don't come any closer than that to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Alex Reyes. I'm a member, I live in Lynbrook. My son's gonna do homeschooling, do the remote learning. So if there is an outbreak, right, and he's already doing from period 2 to 11, he'll automatically jump into period 1 to 5 for the 1 hour blocks.
Yeah, everybody would be on the same schedule. So I'm assuming your student is a secondary student, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, the whole entire class would migrate to the same schedule, correct?
Okay, so would he get a break to like jump into that? Would he have the same teacher?
Yes, everybody, if the place, if this building closes down, let me just put it that way. I guess that's the easiest way of saying it. The entire system would shift over so that everybody in school and everybody is home. It doesn't matter if you were in school part-time or home. Everybody would move to the same thing because it's the same exact teacher, same periods, just, maybe delivered at a different time. So that's why that learning management system that I keep referring back to is important, because it'll tell your student when they need to go to science class, math class, and so on.
Okay, and since he's going to be doing the remote learning, when would he come to pick up his books or pick up the laptop? When would that happen?
All those things will be communicated by the building principal. Yes, there are going to be a couple logistical things that will need to go home, depending on levels. Again, yes, students will need to pick up laptops. There may be materials here, whether or not those materials are books or, like I mentioned, like baggies with science labs in them and different things. Those would all happen through the building principal's communications.
Because because like he has chemistry, he has physics and everything like that, and
Sure.
he has chemistry lab. So how would the lab work for him?
What happens actually at the secondary level, and I know that Dr. Bjork had mentioned earlier about flexibility with the physical education requirements. The other area of which the state addressed, knowing that you aren't going to be mixing chemicals and causing explosions in your house most likely, so that they needed to give another alternative for children. So we do have what they call paper laboratories. A lot of times when a student is in a laboratory science and they're sick for an extended period of time, we need to give them some type of lab experience.
Okay.
So there'll be an opportunity to complete paper laboratories. There'll be some what I'll call demonstration laboratories that'll happen. So maybe the teacher or a student or two in front of the classroom would do a laboratory. Everybody then would be able to use that data set to complete the lab. There may be other opportunities that the students can do what I'll call a simulation lab, which means that the kids would go in and, I know that when I was younger on the computer, you could virtually dissect the frog. It looks a lot better now. So there's all different things like that kids can complete depending on the subject area. There are motion labs for physics. One of the actual lessons that we were tinkering with last week when we had the scientists in the classroom and we were practicing for the, basically that hybrid model where students were in front. I was a student in the classroom. We had, some other administrators, Dr. Burak and Dr. Lynch were on the other side as remote students. We all got to experience what a virtual physics lab looked like. And everybody was able to access one of the FET, it's a physics, website that you can do demonstrations. And we did a motion lab together, through that environment. So there's plenty of ways to make labs work.
Okay, and again, like what type of school supplies I guess he would have to be getting? Will I get a list of school
Yeah,
supplies?
all that information would come through the building, and that's going to vary by, class and such. The one thing that becomes a little bit tricky in general, and again, I think, this might be more of an elementary issue than a secondary, but as Mr. Seda said, the kids are not going to be using those closets in the back of the room. They're not going to be using the lockers, so we're going to have to make it manageable for a kid to show up to school. So, if they're going to have a book bag with stuff and supplies in it, and they're going to possibly be carrying a laptop, we're going to have to be reasonable in what we ask for.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Ivy Riley, resident. First, I want to thank Dr. Burak for being so responsive to emails. Specifically, I have emailed you so many times, and you're always responding as best as you can under the circumstances, and I do really appreciate it. I want to point that out because I feel like the Board of Ed does not respond well, and I'm kind of disappointed about that. Okay, I'm really disappointed in the lack of responsiveness from the Board of Ed, and I'm putting it out there because it's a really common complaint from a lot of people that I'm hearing, and I think you guys can do better. I mean, you say so much, you give so much information at these board meetings, but there's radio silence otherwise, and we depend on you guys. We elect you. We want you sitting here to represent the children and to keep the children in your heads and at all times, especially during something like this, and we want to hear from you. And even if it's, I just don't have the answer right now, I'll get back to you, is better than the form, we read our emails once a week or we'll get to them and then never hear back. So I'm just putting it out there.
Well, but let's be more specific on that one point. So last month, in the throngs of this entire matter, we're the only board on Long Island that met every week. So in addition to a weekly board meeting so we can get information to you, we also had bulletins go out by the principals and the administrators every Friday. So from a communication standpoint, we had meetings where people could ask us questions, and when we had information during the week, we responded to those through the bulletins. So other than those, what was an example of what you're referring to?
I'm not going to point anything specifically out because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I will say that the bulletins come from Dr. Burak. I've seen principal bulletins while we were in school, but I haven't seen anything from the Board of Ed, so I don't know what you're talking about, and I look at everything. So if there's
No, there's nothing, you won't get a bulletin from the Board of Education, so that's not our role. The bulletins that come out every week are, the Board of Ed meetings that we have is where the Board of Ed will address those type of issues that the board gets to, and that's why we had the meetings every week, solely because it was such an uncertain time. It was important for us going through that we had a presence, we had a board meeting, people could ask us questions, and we would respond to those. Then the operational questions, those are the things that the administration, the building principals, are the ones that run and respond back to. So what was something that you felt the board wasn't providing that should have been there?
I feel like the communication is just lacking. I just feel like we had a lot of questions about so many things, and it's very hard to answer that right now on the spot because there was so much information just given just now that my head is spinning. And if anybody else is listening, I'm sure they're thinking the same thing. I've already read all of these. I read this plan beforehand twice. I read the 53 pages of the district plan that was coming out. I've seen questions all over the place, so this isn't my first time, and I still can't process all the information that was here. So I promise you, I will get back to you with something specific if I have it, but I want to put it out there that the community at large has been saying, and I feel the same way, that the Board of Ed members personally maybe could do something else. Maybe could just put something out. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
you need,
I appreciate
maybe you
you
need your own Facebook page.
But let's address that because that's important that you bring that point up. One, I'm very proud of the efforts that we did because it's important to understand board members have no say or we have say, but we only operate as a board. So it's important to understand that when people communicate to us, if you send us an email, you'll get no response until the board actually meets. I, as a board president, may be the one drafting something out, but it doesn't happen until I sit and collaborate with my board members about that. So understand that the board only meets once a month. So there's no communication from board members beforehand. It's not appropriate for them to do that. They have no authority by doing that. There's no Facebook page to say, I'm a board member from Lynbrook and this is what we're doing. Boards operate from their board meetings, and that's why we don't get involved in operations. And specifically to your point, that is why we increased our board meetings to once a week. Once a week, we were available for anything people had any questions about. They can email those meetings because the governor made them remote, and we would answer any questions they had because as a board, we can sit here and communicate and address that. But prior to that, this is the only time we operate. So while the community at large may want to see other things, our jobs are to do the oversight and to do the policies, and as you know how busy it is during budget. But The fact that we had those meetings once a week was to specifically address the concerns of having access to the community, letting them know we were on top of things, meeting every single week. And any communications that come to us, we responded to them, and sometimes we have to wait till we meet, but that is why we had weekly meetings. So we were, every time, once a week, they were hearing from us and seeing from us. Other than that, it's not until we meet as a board, in this moment, in this capacity, are we able to have any official say on anything.
Okay, so I attended every single virtual board meeting, and there were times that there was no audio and that we couldn't see anything, and just tonight, people are, you know, all over Facebook, we can't see anything, we can't see anybody, we can only see that, we don't know what's going on, who's speaking. It's very confusing. As someone outside on the other side looking in, I will say that a lot of people feel like their questions weren't answered from prior weeks. I will say that I feel like everything is answered right now. And then I still have a list of questions because there's just questions every day, and I understand that, and I understand that you're in a position that's difficult because everything changed, and sometimes on a daily basis, they say sometimes on an hourly basis. So I get that, but you're meeting once a week and you're not answering every question that came in through email, and you're not responding to everyone saying, your response is, we'll get back to you, and then there may be an answer at the board level, which is not even a complete answer, but we can't then follow it up because then we're getting an email that says, will we meet next month? So maybe it's something to look into, that maybe there's another way to do it. I don't know what the answer is right now, but I'm saying that this is the feeling that I have, that I would watch a school board meeting and not know anything more and feel really irritated by the fact that I can't get any information. And then my response is going to be, well, if I don't know something, I'm going to email Dr. Burak, and Dr. Burak's always going to get back to me, and I feel very happy and comfortable with that. But I shouldn't have to go to that extent. And not everybody feels the same way, and not everybody will stand up like I am right now and speak out, and not everybody will email just anybody when they want an answer. So I'm trying to express things that some people just don't say out loud. And I'm not saying that you're doing your job wrong. I'm saying that the feeling in the community is that we wish there was a way to get more answers from the board or feel responded to, feel listened to by the school board. And right now, we feel like there's more of a lack of leadership than anything from the school board members.
Well, like I said,
can I just add
sure.
something to that? So one of the things that always puzzles me is people do email the board daily operation questions, and so the board receives those emails, but yet we have principals, we have teachers, we have administrators, other administrators who they're the ones who handle the daily operations. So what I wish people would do is, instead of thinking you go right to the Board of Ed for those things, go to the people who you should be going to first. They should be the last ones you go to, but I don't understand, for some reason, a lot of people just go to the Board of Ed when there's so many things that could be handled, the daily operations, by the people who directly oversee that. So I think that would be, one of the best pieces of advice to give people. Follow that chain. If it's a building level thing, go to the principal. Don't email the board a Marion Street question or a kindergarten question. Email the people who directly oversee that.
I think that's
Does that
a great
make
point.
sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and maybe the school buildings should be taking that leadership role and putting it out to their families that this is how there is a chain of command. Because I think in Lynbrook, it's, oh, I have a question, let me just go straight up there, and then I don't get an answer, and now I think that nobody's doing their job. And I know personally that that is not the case. I've been here, I've seen it, I've come to every meeting or watched every meeting for the last several years. I know what's going on behind the scenes. I've been part of it. I feel lucky to be part of some of the subcommittees that worked on the plan, and I applaud everybody that worked so hard, especially the administration. I mean, you guys have worked tirelessly when I'm sleeping until 10 o'clock some days because we just have nothing to do because we can't leave the house. I honestly have no stamina for this meeting anymore. I'm exhausted from sitting here. This
See,
COVID
we don't
issue-
sleep anymore,
I
so
know.
this is a normal day for us. We have not slept in 2 months.
and that's a good point because you guys have been working so tirelessly, and so many of us, I'm considered non-essential. So everybody's schedules are off, and we're supposed to come back in 3 weeks and now get our kids onto this new schedule and get them back to real life. And I think the struggle in doing that is going to be, you know, is a little overwhelming for so many people, and the uncertainty of what this world is, what's going to happen to this world, and are we going to be the next Georgia? God forbid, you know, I hope not. I hope that we have such a good plan that we can keep it under control, and I hope enough people decide to keep their kids home so that there's fewer people in the building. You know, I mean, it could work out if that happens. There's just so many things, and I apologize because I'm just feeling very overwhelmed by it, but I also thank you for the hard work. I do have a couple of questions, though. One being, why is the elementary starting from 8:30 to 9, considering that, like, with middle school is 7:30 to 8, whereas I think high school kids are more independent. A lot of people still 6th, 7th, 8th will drive their children to school. It's like a whole hour between, so I want to drop my kids off and then go to work, and I think a lot of people are going to complain that it's you know, it's an inconvenience time-wise if they have to go to school, you know, if they have to get to work at a certain time. I'm just wondering what the rationale is for the big gap in between drop-off.
Well, the teacher day on the elementary level begins at 8:30. So the teachers wouldn't be coming in prior to, you know, right before that anyway. So what we did, we staggered the arrival time from 8:30 to 9 for them to come in.
Because it used to be you could drop off at 7:30.
But that's when we had an early drop-off, which we're not doing.
We're not doing that, okay. And now, one of my big concerns about the way we did things in spring was the lack of live teaching from our classrooms. And on the elementary level, what I'm hearing is if, say, my child goes to live school, in-person schooling, and then they have to be quarantined for 14 days, they don't get teaching for 14 days, they get their work sent home or whatever, like, you know, we used to do, you know, in the old days. But my concern is that the middle school, the high school, these teachers are now going to be prepared if we have to go fully remote. And the possibility of us going back fully remote really does exist. So are we doing ourselves a disservice by not having elementary teachers go live as well, at least to some extent? If children are out, they can't come and see into the classroom. I feel like it would be good practice. I mean, it just may not be something that we are able to do under the circumstances, but...
Well, don't forget, towards the end of the spring, the elementary teachers did do the live hourly check-in, so they do have that experience. So as far as, you know, I have faith and confidence that the elementary teachers will be able to go live when it's time to go live if they're the in-person teacher. I mean, I do have confidence that they'll be able to do that.
And they're also receiving training, as we said before. You know, it's not just the secondary receiving training. The elementary the elementary teachers are receiving training. The other challenge, you know, we need to realize it's a different management when you have to manage, like I said, up and watch all the kids in the classroom and the kids on the screen. If we were doing that in an elementary school, you know, there are a lot of different behavioral needs with younger children and management needs that you don't see as much of with the older children. So I think we felt like for an elementary classroom teacher who's with these children for the majority of the day, we need to give them that opportunity to focus on one group at a time.
And also in the elementary
Loud.
education in the elementary level looks very different than education on the middle and high school level. So having a child in kindergarten who's just learning to read or first grade, how are they going to look at the examples on the screen being live streamed when, if they're fully, you know, if their choice is to be remote, it would be something different.
So on that one more point, with the, for the upper levels, the middle school and high school, with the fully remote plan, it's only 5 periods. And so there's no moving between classes, and I understand they have to get up and take breaks on their own. But now they're only getting half the curriculum? That's how I'm understanding it? Am I saying it completely wrong?
Half the curriculum live, half the curriculum asynchronous. So they're still receiving the full curriculum. It's just a different modality.
And when you say asynchronous, you mean they have to do it on their own, like homework?
Correct. It would be independent work so that the students would be, doing things, like I said, they could be watching videos of lessons, they could be doing assignments, they could be doing reading type of things. So there would be a mix of different learning opportunities.
So just to differentiate from what we had in the spring, where kids would have an assignment and it would take 3 days for them to be, they would be allowed 3 days or so for them to finish, that's not going to be
No,
the
that's not the
situation anymore.
case. They would be expected to complete that work, because what's going to happen is it allows the teacher in between lessons to, one, develop the next lesson, and two, check for understanding, because we're going to constantly have to move forward. I hate to say this, but like you are alluding to, I may have 90 live sessions. I still need to cover the full curriculum. So that curriculum will be covered. It'll just be covered in different ways.
Okay, all right, and then just my last, because it's midnight. Just the double-sided tape for the polycarbonate screens, is that really sturdy? We're not worried about that? Double-sided tape, they're not going to fall off these screens, they're not going to be
That was the manufacturer's recommendation on putting
all right, well, thank you, everybody.
Hi, Diana Garapito, resident. I just have a question. If they're in the elementary school level, are they going to be learning the MLS if they're actually going to school?
Yes.
They will.
Yes, that will be part of it, yes.
So at least when they
So that when they go remote.
they'll know it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And is there any way that you could at least put the letter of intent till Monday? I mean, I feel like we're getting all this information, and I have this meeting today, the high school tomorrow, Marion on Friday, and then make a decision. Like the high school level, I'm totally fine with. It's the elementary school level that's every day. No one can say how many kids are going to be in a class. You know,
we
I feel like we have no time to even pull this all together in our minds.
I understand that. However, when we get this information, the principals have to immediately start to pull the data. We have to figure out how many people are going remote. We have to post the positions. So we have to post positions for the remote teachers, right? Those have to be posted for 5 days. Then we interview. Then we have to set up class sizes. We don't have that much time. There's just
I know, but it's
so
a
many
weekend,
logistics.
and this is our kids' lives, so it's like a lot to take in.
I understand.
A lot.
I understand.
That's really it. Thank you.
On my spot. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Craig Kirschenberg, President of the Teachers Association. First, I want to say it's just good to be back here. It's been a really long time, and I know I speak for a lot of teachers when I say we want to be able to get back here. Most importantly, we want to be able to get back here safely, and that's what we've been spending the entire summer trying to figure out. And I really appreciate the collaboration that we've had this summer with administration. I don't think there's been a day this summer that either I or one of my vice presidents hasn't spoken to somebody from central administration. Just bouncing ideas off each other, and that's how we work through all these problems. And through every problem that we somehow manage to solve, 3 more questions and situations come up. But I do appreciate the collaboration, and I wanted to share that. And just to give you one little example of that, there was one day I called Dr. Lynch to talk about some safety stuff, as we do several times a week. And I said, all right, I have a crazy idea I'm going to throw out there. And before I even threw out the idea, he said, you know what, there are no crazy ideas. Let's just, that's how we're ultimately going to solve problems. And that particular idea couldn't work, but that's fine. I just wanted to share that that kind of thinking and that kind of just sharing of ideas and just bouncing ideas off each other and the talking, that's how we ultimately solve problems. That's how we have this plan. I also, I just want to acknowledge, as Dr. Burek said at the beginning of the meeting, which was, I don't even know how many hours ago at this point, how many teachers were involved in all of the planning and the committees. And, we moved part of one of our superintendent's conference days into the summer because, we're talking about the need for training of teachers. And when I went to the teachers and I said, hey, do you want to do this? Overwhelmingly, they were like, we need the training. We need to be ready for the first day of school. Because I've heard some things said tonight about, we can't repeat what happened in the spring. We need to learn from everything that we do. Teachers are learners too. And so we learn and we move forward. We have better technology now that we're in the process of being trained on. I had my first training last night. And, I know everybody's looking forward to hopefully being able to get back to whatever degree we can get back here safely. I think Dr. Belekas was talking before about how we had volunteers coming in to the classroom to practice lessons, try out the technology. Administration was in there to see what was going on. And, all these volunteers, the teachers coming in on their own time to try to do this, to try to make it work. This is how we're solving problems, and I just want to thank the teachers for doing that. I want to thank our tech specialists over there who, never get enough credit, but they deserve so much. So, we want to be ready. Most importantly, we want to be safe. I'd be lying if I didn't say we still do all have a lot of concerns about safety. But I do think that from everyone I speak with, I speak to a lot of presidents of other unions in the area, and I think in terms of safety, we're in a better place than a lot of other districts are right now. And I think that's somewhat comforting for some, maybe not enough comfort for others, but we want everybody safe and we want to be here, and I just wanted to give shout outs to all the people who have been doing lots of work, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Hi, Lauren Pignataro, resident. So much information, so many questions, so many good questions. PTA Council actually sent Dr. Burek a list of over 200 questions, and I think you answered most of them, and yet I have more. Really quickly, Dr. Belekas, you mentioned that the remote sessions will not be recorded, but I think the policy said that the students have up to 3 days to make up a lesson that was that they missed that would have been remote. So how does that work?
There may be assignments from the lesson that the students would complete and so on. It doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily, obviously participate in the lesson per se.
Okay,
Because
so it'd be
I
like
hate to say this,
and that was the full remote model, remember?
Right. And one of the things that, Mr. Belmont had said, the reason why we put that in there was that a technology may fail. You may have a student who sends you a message that says, look, I tried to get into the session, my computer crashed, or the internet went down, or I was in there for 5 minutes. We wanted to give them that opportunity to be able to make up the work and not, be penalized because of what I'll call a technical glitch or something like that.
Great, and that would be through the learning management system. They would sort of submit the
they
work.
can access their assignments through the system, absolutely.
Great. Just a quick question on the elementary level. Are the remote teachers going to be district-wide or local to the school, and will they be teaching from a classroom or from home?
So that's one of the things that we need to coordinate. So we need to know who's going to remote learning so that we know how many we need to hire for that. So depending on those numbers, for example, it could be maybe only 3 Waverly Park students are going remote on the second grade level. Maybe 8 second grade students are going remote at Marion Street, maybe 8 at West End. They would be combined and make one remote learning class district-wide.
And will they be from
If
the
you have
cla-
20, if you have 25 Marion Street, then Marion Street, you would have one designated to Marion Street.
And is your intention that they would be teaching in a classroom in the building or teaching from home?
In a classroom in the building.
Okay, great. And my last thing,
Or
just-
a room, I shouldn't say a classroom. Some space.
my last thing just is a concern, and unfortunately I don't have a solution to offer you, but it just popped into my mind when you talked about the children using the cell phone to display their temperature check. I think there's a possibility that it creates a divide between kids who might not have a smartphone and kind of them being singled out in whatever the process is, being taken to the side every day. So I just thought that might be something to point out worth considering.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Julia Bachman, West End co-president, and just a little louder.
You could yell a little bit.
Is that
Just
better?
project.
Oh, sorry. Julia Bachman, West End PTA co-president and resident. I have a few questions. With respect to the nurses' room, and then that secondary section, how do you envision that being staffed? Is that one nurse? Is there additional staffing?
No.
Just one, okay. On the elementary level for the gold model, is there recess time in addition to lunch?
On the elementary, it would be those mask breaks that they
Okay.
would go outside, get some fresh air.
Okay, and how does that look then? It's just one classroom at a time?
Once again, that's a building level, so
Okay.
that will be scheduled during the course of the day.
Okay, got it. And then for the elementary level, for the gold model, if there are no small groups, is there differentiation this year in lessons?
Yes, you know, there are students that will require all different types of differentiation. You know, we may see, and this is one of those things that, you know, I know will occur, that we may be differentiating more, meaning that there might be some kids who need materials highlighted, but the rest of the classroom won't be at a disadvantage if I highlight the materials for the rest of the room. So there may be things that get projected that are differentiation that, yes, I'm targeting one or two students that really need it, but the rest of the room can benefit from that too.
Okay.
So we may see little adjustments like that, but we're not going to not give it to the kids that need it. We'll
Got
put it
it,
that way.
got it, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Allison Cords, resident. I have two very quick points. I don't want to go on too long. One is a comment and one is a question. So my comment is on the safety of the students, which I know everybody has sleepless nights over, but I just want to reiterate that last year we talked a lot about the results after school shootings and all those types of things. So I hear a lot about windows being open, and we were talking in the beginning of the night about the vestibules being a place where people are kind of lining up to go in. I just want to make sure that we're still keeping the safety of the students as a top priority.
Yep. No,
I just-
we, just so you know, we debated that back and forth because we did not want to compromise all of our safety planning. We have worked too hard
Right.
on all of that safety planning, but we do realize that we have to try to mitigate and increase the social distancing, so, yeah.
Yeah, so
We-
kinda
that's
twofold.
That's a high priority for us.
Yeah. And then my question is, probably Dr. Lynch is going to say, I know what she's going to say, but do we have generators?
No. One for the,
So power goes out because of a natural disaster or a storm, and what will be working?
the emergency lights.
Okay.
And the server room,
Okay, so then remote learning wouldn't be able to,
Well, actually, yes.
okay?
You know, I'm actually really glad you answered that because we have, over this summer, moved almost everything to the cloud. So when I say the Network Operations Center is operating, there's so little happening up there now. Really, all it's doing is powering switches so that we are able to get on the internet.
Okay.
Power School, now in this cloud, continues. Office 365 continues.
The
Schoolology
LMS,
continues.
the
everything
WebEx,
everything
the Teams,
continues. So we
everything's
did
cloud.
we learned, that's what I said, we learned so much that first through Emotet and then through COVID, that we just needed to get stuff out of this building. And it's been a slow process, and I say we're darn close to have just the phone system and the security system, and that's about it. That's upstairs, and the server and the network infrastructure. So that's a great question.
Good, that's great.
Yeah.
So, but the generators to operate each of the buildings,
No,
even with the new space,
it
that's
sits
not.
out in this courtyard, and it basically powers up just where the closet where the internet comes in and where the switching infrastructure is, where all the because all the buildings come back to the high school. This
Okay.
is the hub.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Did you see how excited I get? Thank you. That was a great question.
Jennifer Hinderstein, resident and parent. I just had a couple of questions. Blended classes, are they meeting every day, or are they doing AB days?
Well, there's, obviously, in the blended program, there are different classes. So the classes that are in the small class settings, we are going to be making calls to children in the small class that we would be offering those small classes every day. If you're in a blended program, obviously, you can't be, switching back and forth. So we may be able to accommodate them in their, let's say, an ICT class, possibly, or we may not be able to, depending on the numbers in that room already. So if we are bringing you in here, we may find a space for you to remote into your ICT class from another room, if I can't physically fit you in the room. So yes and no, if that makes any sense.
A little bit, but I figure we'll figure it out.
Yes,
as we
and
go
it'll be
along.
all on an individual basis, because
Right.
it's all going to be a numbers game, depending, the blended is a little bit tricky in the sense that there's two different environments. One of the nice things about the small classes, obviously being smaller in number, it's much easier to keep you in every day, because I don't need to, split the class in half to be able to make them fit. But when they do go into their blended part of the program, where they may be in a large, ICT general ed setting, they may or may not fit in that room depending on what the response was in that specific class. So we're going to have to look class by class.
Okay. In the
And,
ICT.
and there'll be outreach, so don't worry, there'll be outreach so people will know about that.
Okay, if you feel that this is a better question for special ed specifically, just tell me that.
Go ahead.
The inclusion classes. So I know that you said that they're going to differentiate the learning to accommodate every kid in the classroom, but another aspect of that also is that the special ed teacher in the classroom can help individual children. Is there any way to address that in a virtual situation?
When you're saying in a virtual situation, the special educator, as I talked about with the tablet idea, I'm assuming in most of those classes that the special educator would be the driver, meaning the person behind the tablet for the class. Because again, if I wanted to pass out, push out a graphic organizer to help the kids, it doesn't hurt the other kids at home to receive that graphic organizer too. So like those type of things, we would try to make the accommodations work for everybody that may need them. So yes, like I said, we may give more accommodations than are necessary for every kid, but it doesn't mean that they would be, not benefiting from that. We would need to make sure that people's IEPs are followed and that we give them the services they need, regardless if they're one of the kids sitting in front of us or one of the kids sitting behind the screen.
So I'm wondering if it would be possible for there to be any kind of, particularly for the older kids who will be able to advocate for themselves, have some time to communicate with the inclusion teacher if there's a problem that's not addressed in the classroom.
Yeah, there's usually in the courses, depending again on grade levels and such, but there's learning lab times, and that's a good time where they're working with that special educator, in a smaller setting based on the content that they're working on in the classroom. So I think that would be a good place for that.
And that's built into the virtual model? Okay. And could you just explain further what it's going to look like for a child who has to leave the classroom to receive services?
I'm not really sure what the looks like part means, but they will be able to, go out of the classroom and receive their services. So if I have a scheduled OT, PT, speech, reading, math lab, whatever it may be, I would leave the classroom, receive those services, then return back to my class.
And if the child is home?
If the child is home, that would be a scheduled service that, again, it may depend on how the students in that section choose to respond. So we may have an ability, depending on numbers, to have a virtual resource room where all the kids in the resource room are home, and interacting with the teacher that way. It might be a split resource room where some of the kids are home and some of the kids are in the room, and it would be, one of those things where we would be able to work
synchronous?
back and forth. So it really depend on, like I said, a numbers game and how the schedule could work.
Okay, and I can't see anything. I had one more question. I'm sorry. Okay, in terms of the ventilation systems, I know that we're not addressing that now. Is that something that we're going to look into for budgeting for next year? So that, are we going to upgrade that system for future?
The cost to upgrade every single univent, and air handling piece of equipment in the district would be tens of millions of dollars probably. I don't think that would be on the horizon in the near future.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for this. Thank you.
The upsetting thing is this building that we're in right now, this is the 100th anniversary of this building, which is upsetting because we had wanted to do something special for the 100th anniversary of Lynbrook High School, that the cornerstone is 1920, so 2020 is 100 years. So this is an old building, and it would take millions of dollars to bring the univent system up to code. Not up to code, I don't mean that.
In order to get it to get filtration like that, it would have to be more or less a hospital system with a HEPA system in order to get that type of filtration, and it's very expensive.
Anyone else from the audience?
Sure.
You wait this long, you can go up again.
And he was the first one
you
here.
I think you got
He
here
was
like
the first
I think
one
you got
here.
here like at 5:30.
You wanted a seat, and there were extra seats.
Now, if a child is sent home, right, for having COVID,
Elementary or high school?
High school.
Secondary. Okay.
like I had COVID, it took me 7 days to get my exam back.
Hopefully
Okay,
that was
if a child
hopefully that
gets
was a few weeks ago, right?
Huh?
Hopefully that was a few weeks ago, right?
Oh no, I had it in April. If a child gets it on the 7th, right, he doesn't get his test results back till the 14th. Will that child have to stay home for 2 weeks from the 14th or from the 7th?
They're home from the 7th.
They get sent home on the 7th.
Right. So
I
if they were
take- I-
symptomatic, on the 7th,
Yeah,
and that's
symptomatic on the
what
7th.
forced them to get the test.
Yes.
Okay. So that 14 days starts then.
That 14 days start. Then does it start when you receive that you are positive for COVID?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Either way, though.
But remember, if you have a positive, so if you get a test and then you get the results 7 days later and you're positive, you have to get a negative test. You have to be cleared to come back. You can't. It's just not. Oh, it's now 14 days, and you
No,
assume you can come back. You need clearance to come back.
No, yes, I
Okay.
understand because, well, you said the children that don't show the symptoms, they would have to stay home for 10 days and then get a test after the 10 days because they don't have the symptoms, they don't have the fever or anything, but they tested positive. They would stay home for 10 days, is what you guys said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were getting a test. Now, if you test positive and you have all the symptoms and everything, you would stay home the 14 days, get a test on the 15th day, and then you would have to wait another 7 days to get that result back.
Right. You need to be cleared, right?
So
Yes.
virtually, the child will be home for like a month.
Could be, and unless they start to get these test results back sooner.
So then they would be thrown into the remote learning if they're home for a month.
Well, if you was talking about the secondary level, so
Yeah.
don't forget, you can be, because we have the live instruction taking place every day because you're on alternating days, you could tune into it, you'll just be remotely every day, so you wouldn't miss anything.
Okay, so basically the teacher that's doing
The teacher would just know that rather than you being here on your day, you would be home on
you
both
on-
days, yeah.
On both days.
Yeah.
But you're here all day. You're part of the gold, right? You will be here
So gold
every
is
day.
elementary. Gold
Oh,
is
gold
elementary.
elementary. Oh, so the high school is only doing every
Yeah,
other
the high
day?
school is hybrid, it's every other day.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing else in the community, anything else from the board? All right, so,
Dr. Burek, you alluded to earlier in executive session that there might be a specific talk for SEPTA to answer questions.
Well,
Do we have-
I
do we have a date?
believe SEPTA has reached out to Ms. Saban, right? And you're
Okay.
going to arrange something? I don't know what the final.
But we don't have a date? Do we have a date?
Mrs. Saban, I spoke with her today, she's going to set up a WebEx for Wednesday, next Wednesday, at 6 p.m. And when I get that link, this will be published.
Okay, so I just figure since I have you here, I'll say it into a microphone to whoever is still watching and hasn't gone to bed. So there's going to be a WebEx for SEPTA next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Okay.
That's what we discussed, but
So it's not confirmed?
Okay.
when it's confirmed, I'll put it out publicly.
Okay.
Yes, she said she would do it, but until we get the link, it's not.
Okay.
anything else from the board? Heather?
No.
All right. So at this point, we're going to move into superintendent's recommendations, but before we do that, I want to take a moment to just again reiterate what a great job the administration has done, what our staff has done, the teachers. You know,
PTA was very much a part of the
PTA
committees.
has been a great liaison for us with this information. And Mr. Kirschberg, as you said, you know, it was startling and shocking in the beginning of the process, but I think whatever the issues were in the beginning, we've seen a great progression through that process of teachers and students and families adapting themselves to what's going on. And if I stress tonight enough, we have to be flexible about what's going to happen. We have a plan, but the implementation of the plan will be much more difficult than actually what we stated we were going to be doing. So I think it's been a great effort by, yes, Mrs. Denier.
I just have a question that came in from someone at home who couldn't attend. They just said if the full remote plan, if everyone's fully remote, can you explain in detail, and even if it's not now, why it's not going to act as the same as it is when a child is choosing to be remote? So they're going to have, it's not mimicking the true day for high school and middle school. So that was the question. If you could relook at the full remote plan.
Because you have to remember that remote plan, that was discussed, and there was a whole committee on that in the springtime.
I know.
So
Is
that
that-
came before this.
Right, so now
So-
that we
so-
know, can we relook at this?
Well, we'll have to meet with the teachers again.
I apologize.
And see if, you know, they would be willing to take a look at that. But the plan that was presented tonight was the agreed-upon plan.
Okay, this is a question coming. Thank you.
Let's stop looking at emails. We can get out of here.
Sorry.
So again, I think it's important to conclude by acknowledging all those different groups and the effort they did and reminding ourselves all that we have to improvise and adapt and overcome. It was a great deal of work done. I'll also say I've been very proud of this board. The amount of time this board's put in, again, no one else in the state had weekly meetings but us. The amount of reading that we've done, the amount of information that's come to us, you know, I have seen us as being very responsive, very transparent. That was the purpose of having our meetings all the time and being available to the community. So I'm very proud of the work of everyone. And as Dr. Bjork indicated, there's still more stages of information that's coming. There's information next week. There'll be informational meetings with your principals. There'll be more information updated. So there's still a lot more information to come to keep everybody up to date. But excellent job by all involved. This time I'm moving on to the superintendent's recommendations. I'd like to ask for a consent agenda on resolutions 2008C1 through 2008C6, 2008NC1 through 2008NC3, 2008G1 through 2008G29. May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Marcus, second, Mrs. Hanson. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Mr. Pascoff, second, Mr. Pileski. All in favor? At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to go back into executive session to discuss matters of personnel. You got to do it, so somebody's got to put their hand up. Mr. Yeager, second, Mr. Pascoff. I appreciate it. Everyone, get home, stay safe, and be happy. Kyle, let me know